And for all my colleagues, it's something that we need to reinforce at each and every level and not rely only on our willingness to do so. Sorry.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of what happens when you say, let the people decide whether they want the planet to survive or not.
It's when you do security, for instance, I think that a lot of us probably are very aware of what the cybersecurity issues are. But a lot of us are not. So if we do not have a policy, means that how do we ensure that what you do is secure? We'll end up with things. And for sustainability, is almost the same. It's.
And so if we think back to the goal of today, which is to provide engineering leaders with insights, how do you advise engineering leaders coming in? Maybe I'm an engineering manager of a squad inside of a bigger company. What advice would you give them to really to think about the responsibility of what they're doing and to put it into action inside of the context of maybe a company with short-term growth goals?
Yep.
And maybe that isn't something that is coming top down from leadership the way we'd like to see it. How do you think about people who are inside that organization to affect change?
Actually, it has to be, for sure, the bottom-up works, but it has to be also top-down. That means that the top management say, we will not do something that is, or we will try as much as we can to avoid to do something that is not sustainable. So it has, and that solves some P&L issues. The second thing is that you need to have ambassadors. You need to have people that are opinion leaders, people that can be at any time reached where I want to do this, what do you think? Until you have, I would say, a complete policy, which will never happen. And so it bottom up for sure, top down, and opinion leaders that will promote this kind of things.
Florence?
I think it reminds me of the GDPR. So I think that by law it helps. It's like, as you said, policy can help. But to answer your question, how do we convince people to follow it and remember that? I think that we have to make them care. So it's by empathy. And when I started to get interested in accessibility, it was in a conference with people who couldn't see. And I was trying the mobile app that I had developed, and it just wasn't working at all. It was a total torture for him. And since then, I'm really careful about that. So it's just making people be aware of what is happening when we don't do it. Who are we excluding? What are the real costs and these kind of things? And the second answer, I think it's the metrics, to be able to measure where are we now. And we don't want to get worse. And step by step, the only purpose is just to get better at this, and then we can start moving forward.
Yeah, what you said is really important. Observability is a key point of being sustainable, because you need to be able to measure, and that's actually a really hard point to reach sometimes, because software can be complex to look at, and hardware even more. We actually that's one of the reasons we work with Scaleway at the time, because when you want to make sure to be able to look at what you do and what kind of energy you're using, you need to know stuff like what your software is doing, but you also need to know the underlying hardware. And cloud can make things a bit complicated on this, but it can also, when it's done well, help and make sure that resources are mutualized and reused for several customers. And a company like Scaleway that provides a public view on the power usage effectiveness can be something that's really useful, because that helps us to be able to give an actual number what we are using. Currently at Golem.ai, we are able to tell every single one of our customers how much CO2 equivalent they are creating just by working with us, and how much they're actually saving compared to what would happen with something heavier or less optimized. So observability is really a key point of just being able to do some sort of frugality.
Just to react on this, which is actually sustainability is not a personal approach. It is an ecosystem approach. It's not something that you can do by your own. You can try whatever, but if I rely on her, I will take a part of what she is doing, and I take part of. So it is also important to measure, to have a holistic view of what we are doing. Maybe my software is quite good when I look at it aside, but when I run it somewhere, maybe so the holistic view, putting the whole ecosystem around, is probably one thing that we all need to do.
And what are some good examples of companies that you know that Soprasteria sees of companies creating this sort of change, kind of making the turn, like getting educating themselves, exposing themselves, and making it something they can see.
Actually, we are on a good panel. If you see what they are doing here in AI, you see that they are not using, or they don't require such much power that I can require by other solution. So that's a good example, and you are also a good example. You are also a good example because the consumption that you have, the way that you manage this, is something that helps all of us to do this. Now, hopefully, it started to be a bit everywhere because, thanks to all of you, we put the pressure on all the providers to be a bit responsible. So it's also our role as an individual to say, okay, that's, and you can see even in the large hyperscaler that they are started to do something. It's Google is providing a couple of tools where they can measure their impact and so on. And so we need to embed this in all our solution. That's why I've said by design is something where when you build a solution, we'll use it. And I'm sure that if we all do this, probably in the future it will be more sustainable.
Okay. Well, I think that, I really like this notion of we started the conversation, we talked about, what does responsibility mean? We talked about democratization and trustworthiness and sustainability. But I really like this notion of observability. Yeah. And it's almost, what you're talking about here is almost the extreme end of observability, which becomes peer pressure. It's like, it's so in your face that it's undeniable observability. Okay.
And if I may, a last word to get back to explainability. As of today, we are all used to have what I call deterministic systems. You put A, you get B. Now he comes, I come, you come and say, you put A, probably you have 95% of getting B. And then we explain to someone that we will not grant him a loan. In the past, you say you are less than 30 years, blue eyes, X. Now you said the system said that. So if we are not able to explain, to say why do we say this, not only for the end user, but also for people who decide to use the system, we will have no adoption. And the responsibility of each of us, in addition to sustainability, is to be able to explain what something that looks like a black box. Say, why do you say that? I don't know. It's the system. It's deep learning, sir. But no, it's so. I think it's also in building responsible software, being able to explain it.
I think the keyword that you use a lot is by design, and the only way to build something that actually has this kind of results is to do it by design and to think it like as early as possible. Because if you try to make something explainable after working 10 years on it, you're not going to be something that's not going to build something that's truly explainable. If you want to do something that's sustainable, it's even worse. Like you need to build things, and you need to build what you do with people that have these values to make sure that it's actually taken into account at the core of the projects we're working on.
Last thoughts, Florence?
A small word about diversity, because you said that, it's hard to have the great data, to have data that reflects the actual society and doesn't nourish the same system which is already unequal or uneven for people. So if we are aware of that, we have to try to do something, and if we can have diverse teams, just at least ask for people who are diverse about their feedbacks from outside, and that could help having less bias, I think, in this
I
kind of systems.
cannot agree more. Diverse team.
Awesome. That seems like a great place for us to wrap up. Thank you guys for talking about this with us. Let's give them a huge
Thank
round
you,
of
Liam.
applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving right along, we talked a little bit about building responsible software. Why don't we jump right in and deep dive into a company that's dealing a lot with this topic. Please welcome up on stage the Director of Engineering at FreeNow, Eniko. Give her a round of applause. Hey, nice to meet you. Grab a seat here, I'll jump in the middle. We'll have a good time. Small technical question. Oceane, je peux avoir le télé? Ouais, voilà. Okay. That's all. I lost my feedback monitor halfway through the last talk. So if you were wondering why I kept turning my head, it's because I was blind. So sorry.
No
Eniko,
worries.
thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, super nice to be here. I just flew in from sunny Germany, and oh my god, it's super hot here in Paris. It's crazy.
Yeah, the air conditioning is working so far, but I think
Yeah,
outside
thanks
people
a
are
lot
melting.
For that. Outside is crazy. I'm melting.
Yeah, what a great time to talk about sustainability and responsibility. You know,
Absolutely.
right in the middle of a heat wave in June.
It's a huge reminder that we should do something about it.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about FreeNow. Like, you know, we talked a little bit before, but I feel like a really great place to start this conversation is just talk a little bit about the trajectory of the company and where you guys are coming from and where you're going right now.
Yeah, so absolutely great connection to the previous topic as well, because it's not just from the software perspective, but also the responsibility of the company, which we basically represent. So FreeNow is FreeNow is a mobility app, basically a super app, where we provide options for customers to just say, hey, this is where I want to go. I want to go to middle of Paris. And basically we give them all kinds of different options, sustainable options to get there. Right now, the biggest problem in our world is, yes, climate change, more cars, electrification, and we just want to provide all of the different options for people and, of course, push them to ditch their cars. So right now we are in 11 countries, 170 cities, more than 200,000 vehicles. So we are really doing this big push to make the environmental footprint of people as small as possible. And also with that, make our own company and engineering footprint as small as possible.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about that. So, I mean, obviously, you guys are right in the middle of this micro-mobility, alternative mobility, getting away from cars, or at the very least, getting away from one person per car paradigms. So, how does that reflect inside in the engineering organization? How do you guys think about the way you operate as a team and how it reflects what you're trying to build for?
Obviously, it's a great challenge because the whole mobility industry didn't really exist like 10 years ago, right? So even 5 years ago, you didn't think like you get from A to B in Paris on an e-scooter. So the whole mobility industry is changing every single day, and we have a huge responsibility of keeping up with that. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges we have. We started as like a small startup only providing taxis, and now we are like a multi-mobility global company trying to keep up with all of these different options and the whole mobility industry. So this is one of the biggest challenges for us, alongside with the challenges every one of us have, right? You have Corona, you have the super crazy tech industry where everyone is trying to hire your talent and you have to do everything to keep them. And then, of course, on top of that, the hackers are going crazy because they have all the time in the world to try to get into your systems. So actually, the whole world is changing a lot around us. And also our company is kind of like growing up from a startup to a scale-up. So basically, it's a change every single day. I think we don't have anything else than challenge every day to react on all of this. And of course, it also means that we have a big goal to be carbon neutral, to be the biggest mobility provider, to really push people into responsible mobility, to ditch their cars. But then, of course, next to this huge responsibility, we also have the have the goal to try to build something which the customers like.
And so, how? Tell me a little bit about the challenges that you guys face around that scale, right? So, we see a lot of startups that have scaled up, and most of them would say it's easy. You pay them all the money, you get the giant office, you put everyone in the big office, you give them all the expensive computers. How are you guys trying to take a different approach to going through this scale-up stage?
So for us, I think the biggest difference is the whole growth mindset topic. So you see that in this industry, we have to take an approach where we can change every day. We have a big vision of where we want to go, but how we get there can change a lot. So we are super aligned on, yes, mobility, super app, sustainability, and so. But then how we get there is something which we work on every single day. So first of all, we try to hire engineers who are in a growth mindset. So they want to grow, they want to learn, they want to do different things, ideate every day. But we also try to do the same mindset in how we develop products. So we don't want to be a feature factory where you say, I want to develop these 5 things over 2 years, and I have like a roadmap which I strictly follow. For us, it's more like we want to go in a growth mindset, also how we build product. So we have a goal, we have a metrics we want to achieve, and then we try to small scale, try out different things, experiments, see how people react on it. And if we see that it's not really working, change direction, try to, try out something else, POC something else. So the whole key is basically growth mindset in the teams and also in the product. So you are super flexible. You can super quickly react on everything around you and give the responsibility to the teams to actually do the right thing.
And do you feel like having a remote structure for your engineering team aids or inhibits that? As you try to kind of hire people from anywhere and maintain a smaller carbon footprint by reducing commute. Do you feel like that you're able to adapt to that sort of new paradigm, this sort of post-pandemic paradigm? Are you able to keep everyone focused on the mission, focused on the bigger picture?
Absolutely. Actually, remote work helps us a ton because it creates just natural diversity, because we are now able to hire from everywhere remotely, or whoever prefers going into our offices. So this way we have in our engineering team 300 people from like 50 nationalities, and it creates naturally such a great power, diversity, a lot of different ideas and minds. And that's really a great support for this whole growth mindset, because everyone can express and take responsibility for what we build.
And what would you recommend to companies that are maybe newer to remote work? Maybe they started during the pandemic or they started before and they were small enough that they stayed in one city. They never really made the leap to hire outside of the city where they are. How do you talk to other engineering leaders about switching to a hybrid or a remote work model? What kind of advice do you give?
Honestly, I think a lot of us are pushed into this situation, so they obviously have to react on the market, they have to react on what's happening around us. But what I would give as an advice to everyone, to just embrace it, try to live it, try to get the right talent, doesn't matter where they are, and just work with them, and you will see the benefits on the go. It's more of a thing where it's new, it's challenging, but you just have to lean into it, and you will see that it is really the right way to go. This is really going to give you the benefits of the diverse mindset, the different ideas, and having all kinds of cultural backgrounds. So my advice always, go for the change, lean into it, just do it.
I like it. Lean into it, just do it. Well, I'm sure we could talk about this for hours, but thank you very much, Anniko, for coming by. Please give Anniko a huge round of applause. Thank you. Okay, moving right along, really excited to welcome up our next guest. Please welcome up Leah from Platform. Hey. I'm so glad that the fist bump became the de facto. I gotta tell you guys, the bees sucks. And I'm just so excited that we got rid of that as a people. That was, silver linings, okay? Fist bumps are the way to go. I'm happy about it. I'm sorry. A
Yeah.
little bit of a divergence. That's not the topic for today. We can talk about that another day. But how you doing, Leah?
Good. It's really good to be here. This is my first time at VivaTech. I'm very excited.
It's a big day.
Well, I also want to thank the organizer. This is a great session. This is how we're going to address sustainability, is by talking about it and collaborating.
Thank you for being here. You know, when we first started talking about this, I said I didn't want to do greenwashing. I didn't want to bullshit the topic. I said I want someone who can come and talk about this from a position of authority, and I feel like I kind of fell into the right hands. So, I don't ask this very often, but talk to me a little bit about your relationship to climate change and,
Sure.
and sort of where you're coming from and how you ended up at platform.sh.
Okay. So I became aware of environmental problems at a very young age. I grew up near 3 Mile Island and my family evacuated. And that inspired me to go on and get a PhD in atmospheric chemistry and study our atmosphere, and then worked for a long time on science policy interface, working on sustainability. So my entire professional career has been looking at sustainability from a scientific point of view. And the job I had before becoming the environmental impact officer at platform.sh was at the IPCC technical support unit for working group 1. So working on the last report that just came out. And then when I saw there was available a position to have a real impact at scale, I jumped on it.
Yeah, and we know the platform.sh guys well. I've known Fred and Ori for over a decade. Hey, okay, I'll see you soon. But we go way back. But tell me a little bit about coming from, let's say, more of an academic background, jumping in. You said you wanted to get an impact. How do you think about coming into an organization and reducing the carbon footprint in the cloud? How do you take what was your approach coming into a new company?
Well, first off was to talk with people like Ori and Jerome, Andrea, he's here today, and we were on the same wavelength. We wanted to have the same type of strategy, and the way I think about this, because I kind of need an acronym to think about these things, is have a mode strategy. So this is really ties into the discussions you've been having before. So the first thing you need to do is measure. And so Platform is a signatory to the Climate Act, and one of the first things you need to do when you're part of that consortium is have a carbon audit. So we've done our carbon audit with Greenly, so a third party measured the impact of our employees, which was 94 tons of CO2 equivalent, and also our impact in the cloud, which was much larger, 3,800 tons CO2 equivalent. So you can see that's significant, and that's the cloud impact of our clients. But it's important first to get a size of the impact you're having, and then you start changing things to see what's most effective. So digitalization is one of the pathways that the IPCC said is important in reducing CO2. And by moving to the cloud, it's more efficient. And that's where we get into this idea of optimization. And under optimization, I would say there are two things. So one is what was already mentioned by Killian, which is observability, right, of your code. And so at Platform, we have Blackfire, which is a code profiler. And with a video game example, they were able to reduce by 20 times the use of their resources. So this idea of we have all these computers at our disposition, and we have to be smart about the way we're programming it, but also by how we're using our data centers, whether it's in the grid or dedicated. And Greenly not only did our carbon audit, but also looked at the way we use our servers, so the density. And on the grid, they found that the platform deployment was used 12 times fewer resources, 12 times more efficient, and on the grid was 5 times more efficient, which translates into energy reduction. Not 1-to-1, but the energy reduction for the grid was 10 times. And so this, I think in the past there was this idea that we have all this computing power, just throw metal at it. And that's not the approach at Platform. The approach is really reduce the amount as much as possible of the resources that you can. And then the last part of the strategy is educate. And we want to be humble about the way we educate. We're educating ourselves through research and working with others.
And how do you think about educating the engineering team internally at Platform? I got to imagine a big part of it is the people who are actually writing the code that's going to make observability possible for the clients.
Absolutely.
Or that's going to actually affect the way that the product is being deployed and scaled.
Yeah, and I was actually blown away by the engineering team. They had already started work on what's called a region API that gives you visibility of where you deploy to. That was the D in the mode strategy. And so a lot of the times when we deploy our work packages, we just click a button and we don't think about the carbon impact of the data center we're using. But what we allow through the engineering team is you to see the carbon intensity of the grid of that data center. So you can pick the greenest region as you deploy.
Okay, so we've got measure, optimize, deploy, educate.
That's it.
Mode.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it now. Okay. Do you feel like this is a model that is something unique to Platform? Do you feel like this is something that other companies can deploy as well? Do you feel like that scales to other organizations, or is it specific?
I think this is a good way to think about any applications that's being deployed to the cloud. So in that way it is, and I think that every organization will need its own tweaks, and once they measure, it'll be clear to them where they need to put their time and effort.
Well, what do you see as the biggest kind of hurdles over the next 5 years? I mean, let's scale that down since we've been talking about cloud. Yeah. What do you see as the biggest hurdles for companies trying to overtake this today, right? You talked about Greenleaf, for example, or third-party audits. A really good way to get started. The barrier is pretty low. The barrier is maybe financial, but not that much, not enough compared to the size of the problem. What do you see as the bigger challenges? Like, where in that change framework do you think companies really hit a wall today?
I think we're seeing a lot of companies scaling up quickly, and I think that because the tech sector is so interested in climate change, sustainability, becoming carbon neutral, and communicating on this, that I hope that the tech community comes together to avoid a zero-sum situation with respect to carbon offsets and carbon removal. I hope there's more collaboration there.
Okay, and just to wrap up, why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the things you're most excited seeing inside of Platform.sh right now? Maybe some of the changes that you've seen put in place. I know that Fred was on stage yesterday beside or on the same day as Bill Gates, of course, and that was a pretty big day for you guys. What are some of the things that are really exciting you guys right now, and some of the things that you guys are most happy with respect to reducing carbon footprint?
So I think we're just at the point now where we're able to communicate what we're doing with our green initiative, and with Fred being in San Francisco at TechCrunch, that's part of it. I will also tease that we have a big announcement coming out the 21st, the solstice, and there have been a number of interviews that have been done where we're talking about not only the announcement but what we've been doing on green on that. So that I'm really excited about that. And then we have a number of conferences where we'll be spreading this information coming up as well.
Awesome. Well, Leah, thanks for coming by. Really appreciate it. Really excited to learn more about this. And thanks for sharing some wisdom.
Thanks for the invite. It was a pleasure.
Let's give her a huge round of applause. Okay, gang. One last topic that I'm really excited to talk about today. When I was thinking about companies that have dealt with ecosystem level challenges, that you cannot think about the last 2 years without thinking about Doctolib. And I reached out to Nicholas a few weeks ago and I said, please tell us a little bit about your experience, share the Doctolib story over the last 2 years. And I don't know why, but he said yes, and I thought that was lovely. And I'm really excited to have him on stage with us. So please give a huge round of applause to Nicolas from Doctolib. It's been so long since I did it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it'll come on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. Thank you, Liam. Yes, I'm Nicolas, and as you can see, I'm ex-VP of Engineering. So I basically left the company 2 weeks ago after 7 years over there. And so I joined the company. We were 80 people. We are now 2,500. And the tech and product team was basically 2 people, the tech founders, and they are now 650 people. So it was a huge journey, and voilà. I will try to explain really briefly what happened in the last couple of years, and it was quite tense. Anyway, I think as a bit of context, it's important to know a bit more about our tech philosophy. We'd like to call it the boring architecture, and really it's something that we had as a core value since a long time. It's really a tech philosophy about we are always seeking for the simplest solution to implement. We never forget that the tech is really at the service of the strategy of the business, and to implement the issues and the challenges that they are giving us, we're always looking for the simplest solution. On 2 axes, one is being the build, and the other one is being the run, how you operate that into production. And we are always keeping that as a core value. Like, for example, we used to have no cache. It will come up in the presentation. Anyway, how can we democratize teleconsultation? The teleconsultation was really more of a side product at Doctolib. It was working, we had a good solution, but we had like 3,000 practitioners, which is not so much, and it was a working product, but we were not investing massively in it because we had the feeling that practitioners were not that much ready for the product. Anyway, then COVID hit us all, and so it changed a bit the thing. From basically having no traction for this, we had 30,000 practitioners willing to use the product. And since it's really at the core value of our mission, which is to provide a better access to healthcare to patients and also to ease the work of the practitioner, it was quite important for us to do something. And so the product that we had so far was a manual onboarding, and it was not really processed and industrialized, should I say. And so we had to do something because now, for the next Monday, 30,000 practitioners wanted to work with teleconsultation. So the good news is like the mission that we have at Doctolib is quite motivating for our developers. And so I just had to ask to the teams, and plenty of developers were willing to work through the weekend to be able to unlock all these practitioners. So we worked like crazy, and we were able to unlock a good majority of them. Why? Because we work like a super sharp. We choose the easy case, so basically a practitioner working alone in his practice, and with already a laptop and this kind of topic. Anyway, that was really good, but that was not the only thing. We had so many changes, to help the whole change of the healthcare industry, and that's why we had basically no feature team working on the COVID previously, obviously, and we had to move from 0 to 80% of our feature teams. We had 20 at that time working on COVID-specific functionalities. Because it was so many changes, basically you wanted to warn the patient that you should not come to, you must not come to the practice, or only for specific things, or maybe you are a physiologist and you cannot exerce anymore, so you have to cancel every appointment that you have and to recycle them in a different way. So you need to have new features to adapt to all of this. That was quite a challenge, and especially it was reorganization pretty much every day. And I'm sure like a lot of like you, we had to also switch to full remote. But basically, we had so many changes that we had Stan, our CEO, who was really well connected with the healthcare industry and people. So he had a really good vision and he knew what to do. And so he really used a top-down approach. And so basically, through the CPO and myself, we were every morning having a stand-up about, okay, which reorganization are we going to do for the whole team, pretty much. So every morning we just had a spreadsheet and we had to go, okay, we're going to make this team work on this. Oh, and in this team you have this person who's super good about the booking funnel. So we're just going to use it. And it's working. I think we should not be ashamed of that. Top-down is working super well. And it's not the best indicator, but it's worth what it is. And we were able to deliver 300 user story, let's call it like that, before that. And we went from 300 a month with the same number of developers, we went to almost 700. So we had a huge push in productivity. And it was super efficient. But, and obviously there is a but, it's not a good one. But it was super stressful and it's really not sustainable. First of all, and I think the worst would be the people. Everything was extremely urgent. We had to do everything for yesterday because we knew that some doctors could not work without this feature. And to even have a story, we used to go to production to do a rollout once a day. During this time, we went to 3 rollouts a day, just because we could not wait 2 hours for this new feature to reach the end user. And so it was crazy like that for weeks. And so obviously at one point it's crazy for your developer, but not only for the developer. Picture yourself as a product manager. You arrive on the stand-up in the morning and you just have half of your team which is not here. Why? Just because the VP, myself actually, just decided that, okay, these 2 people are so good on this subject that they need to go there. But because we have so many things to do, I was not able to communicate properly. And so it was frustrating for everyone. And last but not least, obviously, we had to lower our quality standard. And we knew that on some topic, just to go fast, we would not code the best as we could according to our coding standards. And I think it's okay as well. It's good to say that it's good to lower your quality standard. But how? Only if you track everything that you're leaving behind. So that was have a list of every crap that you leave behind. And when things will come down, we will categorize them in different topics. Basically, for some debt, it's like, okay, but we know that as soon as the COVID or this kind of feature will be over, we can just remove the code and it will not stay. But this piece of code, it's a functionality that will stay forever, so we will need to refactor it for it to reach our standards. And so it was really about having a big project that we brand Clean the Dirt, but it's also about negotiating that with the CEO from the beginning. Because you could have the CEO, he's like, okay, it's amazing, we are working twice as fast. Yes, but it's not sustainable. So you have to be careful and super clear from the beginning. Okay, I like to say that it was kind of the first season of the TV show COVID for us. But after that, after 8 crazy months, basically, we had a new wave coming, and it was the vaccination campaign. In a couple of words, it all started with, we just want a simple feature. We want to be able to book 2 appointments, one after the other one, and with a delay in between. So your 2 vaccination shots. Nice, seems easy. And actually, we had a crazy timeline. We were aware of that, but I would say mid-December, we knew that we won the Berlin state, and so we had to deploy the vaccination center in Berlin for them. But we also knew that, okay, but after that, France will come, and we'll have to deploy vaccination center, and more and more. And so basically, we had state as our product owner, and asking crazy feature day after day, and to deploy that everywhere. And that was super stressful in terms of delivery as well. But it was also a vicious circle, because clearly we are not building a rock concert selling platform. We are not ready for this kind of crazy number of people connecting to the platform, or at least we were not. And so it was kind of a vicious circle that you would come to the platform, and just because the system was not built for that, you would have kind of a vicious circle, or you would look for something, and meanwhile, the time you're going through the process, someone already booked the appointment. And so you would do more search and put more pressure on the database and go crazy, and then code someone at Doctolib to be pissed off, and go on and go on. And the good news is, like, we had silver bullet, and the big one was the cache. Since we were always refusing almost to use cache anywhere to keep things simple, we had this silver bullet. And cache was a big one, to be honest, because picture, let's say, a Parisian looking for an appointment when we knew that we had no doses at all. You would basically ask for every vaccination center, which had hundreds of agenda. You will look for every slot, and at the end, you will have make so many computations cycle, and you know that you don't have any doses anyway. So maybe it's a good place to put a cache and to say, nope, I know that, we just don't have anything. And so we just started by a no availability cache, and that was a huge save for the platform. But that was one save, and we had many issues. And maybe in the first season that I was talking about, it was okay, a lot of pressure because we wanted to deliver some new functionality to help the practitioner. But now it was even more pressure because it's like, if we are not able to solve this technical issue, the platform will just collapse. And that's even worse because then we will know that practitioners that are using our service just cannot work, and some patient, will not be able to book an appointment for any kind of thing. And so it was also a top-down approach, but it was more on the tech side. So basically it was the chief architect, myself, and let's say the principal engineer. We were having a stand-up every morning, and every morning it was okay. If we don't do anything, we know that tonight they will talk about us during the TV show tonight, and we're gonna collapse if we are not able to save that. So please, let's focus, let's think out of the box, and let's find the thing that will save us. And it was really trying to avoid a tunnel effect, but just a tunnel effect of one day could have been too much and too hard. And it was that day after day, because we knew that the doses were arriving, and the pressure on the platform was building up and building up. Anyway, so many stories behind, but the really important one and the big one was the 12th of July. Basically, the French president just announced that now everybody can have a vaccine. And I like this story because for me, personally, we are so used to craziness and to go to the 20h, as we say in France, so the big TV news, that I was used to this kind of craziness. For this one, we knew that there would have been a talk by the president, but it was like apparently they won't share much. And so I was at a restaurant, to be honest, and I saw a crisis on my phone. So, it's okay. I came back to my home, and I opened Le Monde app, and I see on Le Monde this tweet from Dr. Lib. Say, oh damn! And so I rushed to the crisis mode, and so clearly it was panic mode, and it was. Too bad because in some ways we were prepared. We could have pushed all the threshold to the maximum, increase the number of pod, increase the size of the DB, the computation power and so on, and we could have made it. But anyway, we were also able to use a waiting room, and in the end, we survived. Okay, it's super fast about all this story, so many details, and please talk to me right after if you want more. But the key takeaways from this presentation that I like to give is like the KISS principle and the fact that we were able since 7 years, in 9 years, to build an architecture and a platform which is simple. It's a super asset. Because if at one point you need to move fast, to change everything, or to react super fast, the fact that it's simple makes it possible. The top-down approach, I like to say usually we are saying it's a bad idea. Yes, it's clearly a bad idea on the long term. But from time to time, it's good to allow it, especially when the things are crazy like that. But if you do that, you really need to be clear upfront with the COMEX and to tell them, fair enough, we can do that. But we will accumulate debt pretty fast. And that means that after that, you will have to freeze everything so we can clean the mess. If not, you will break everything. And the last one, but the most important one for me, it's really to take care of your team, because in this time, they are the most important asset. And for us, it was weird because the mission, first of all, it was a new way of working, but also the mission was super dear to anyone. And in these crazy times, it was super nice, even for myself, for the whole team, to feel that you can be useful in this. But you have to take care of your team, and some people want to work every day and night and so on. You have to force your people to rest and to take care of themselves to be able to do that on the long run. And we were expecting, that to work on this for two months. We are still on it. Voila, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good one.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Nicolas. Really, really awesome to see that from the inside. Get a sneak peek. So we've got a few more themes for the rest of the day. This morning we talked about open source. We talked about the multi-cloud. We talked about managing and growing talent. And for the next few themes, I really want to talk about some more developer-centric things. I want to get into it. And one of the big topics, if you ask any developer what they care about, we go right to developer experience. It's something that when you work in the developer tools space, you think about it all the time. You think about what is the experience of the developer. And I really wanted to talk with people who are thinking about how engineering teams are operating and what kind of experience they're getting. And so I'm really excited to have a few speakers come join us to talk about this and talk about how developer experience is changing, how it's evolving, how expectations of developers from their engineering organization are changing. So to kick off that theme, I'm really excited to welcome up Patrick from Circle CI. Please give him a huge round of applause.
Hello. Good afternoon. Before I start, I suggest to share some story. Imagine you are a young developer, and you just join a company. Okay, so IT bring you a new computer. All right, so you set up the process through IT. You set up the computer, you install your favorite IDE. It would be interesting to know what IDE you prefer. Still easy. Then you start installing some favorite plugins. All right. Then you continue. Connect to the repo of the company. We can imagine. Look at it. Try to clone it. Install the dependencies, and then moving again, you want to know how the project is working, then you want to understand how to compile, find the README, discover that the README is not up to date, okay, and so on and so on. Does it remind something? Is it something that developers really live daily? So, in fact, the list is far long, and I stopped before all the topics we can imagine a developer will have to do daily, okay? And I think, and when I share this with my team, I say we had something, cry on the floor, maybe, so because sometimes it's very hard. And in fact, I think all this topic is really key to understand that we need to care about the developer experience. We really need to care about it deeply. Okay, so I will try in a few minutes to explain what we call new developer experience and why we think it's a topic we need to really have in mind. Maybe not new, but something in a new way to see it. So maybe I should have introduced myself before. So I'm Patrick Joubert. I'm the head of developer experience at Circle CI. I would call myself as a tech lover. I love tech. I'm in the company, the old man with gray hair. I'm 50, 25 years in the tech. I founded 3 companies. The first one, BMAP, my first love, I would say, around cloud. And thanks for the invitation, Scaleway. Cloud is always here. The second about conversational AI, and we were at the first VivaTech edition, so I love the way to being connected with the tech industry. And the last one was Ponycode, and we joined through the acquisition Circle CI, and we are focusing 100% on developer experience. So, what we want is to make developer happy. I don't want developer take the computer, put it in the trash. No, we want to focus on this. Okay, so what you would say, developer ecosystem, in a way, and I'm sure you know that, is a very still immature ecosystem. Most of the time when I say this, say, but we know we have lots of new things on the table. When I started, we do not have repos. When I say this, you say, no repos? Yes, no repos. No cloud. Okay, no CI. And even if we have these new tools, we still have lots of flows, lots of issues, lots of things to manage to be sure that we will produce nice software. And if I ask some developers, and maybe you will be happy to answer, and when I ask developer, what do you want and why are you a developer? Write great code. What you want, why you're a developer, is because you want to write great code. And even if the ecosystem is still immature, we need to find ways to remove all these flows to ease the ecosystem. So, back to developer experience. What I suggest is we see developer experience as one definition. I would suggest that we look at many ways of seeing developer experience. Maybe on the top right with the pyramid, you can see it as starting with a function, the stability of it, the ease of use, and then the feature and the capacity you will develop. Okay, so it will be the experience through the technical way of seeing it. One way of seeing the developer experience. On the left with the circle, some would say it's the mix between the user experience and then development principles. And then when we connect both, we will have the developer experience, and that's where we should have developer experience. But in fact, when we look, and if we Google it, okay, we want to know what is developer experience. And Google answered this. So if you do it now, I was surprised when I checked yesterday the definition. This changed from the one I captured earlier in March now, meaning that in fact the interest of developer experience is changing and the way we can see developer experience is changing. What I like in this one is they use a technical product in their workflow. And I think we have to keep in mind that for developers, and put the developer at the center, using a tool, a technical product, in their workflow. And you will see that for us at Circle CI, it's important to put that in context with the workflow. So, what's our vision for developer experience as we are leading this topic for Circle CI? In fact, I would start with the developer is at the center. And don't forget that developer experience is for the developer. And then you have to see it as a whole in many areas. And first we will focus on, does it create value? Or we can say, does it make sense? Clear goals, clear objectives, and what you are doing will have an impact for the company. And be sure that you know that. The second topic is, what's the physical environment? And when we were talking about this topic a few years ago, some people say, is remote something important for some companies in the tech that were pushing this? We all know with COVID crisis that now this topic is really key, and bringing the experience of developer linking with their physical environment will have an impact on how they work and how they can enjoy the way they work and so on. So you will have to pay attention of this, office facilities and remote work. The third point is it a team effort? Meaning developers are not most of the time standalone and are integrated in a team, and you have to be aware of what type of collaboration you are putting on the table, what type of inclusion, what type of way you have for sharing and so on. And the last topic, last but not least, what is the developer environment? And for us, at Circle CI, it's the area we are focusing deeply is to look at processes, infrastructure, tools, all the details where the developer is coding. Their environment, their daily environment, meaning their technical environment. So, we need a boring slide. Sorry for that. On this slide, on the top, you can see the development process. Okay? And for us, the development process and the flow for developers is really, really key. And you can see where Circle CI want to make an impact. You have the CI/CD part, which is where Circle CI is leading, obviously. And you have the test and debug coming from Punycode acquisition. And if I have one message for easing the developer experience while coding, is the earliest possible. Meaning, help developer to code and to develop better code the earliest you can. Meaning, while coding, get feedback of the code quality in the IDE. While coding, give feedback about you should modify this documentation because you modified that type of code in the IDE. Same story for the security, and so on. Shift left, everything. And really, really, we see impact of the happiness of developer bringing this on the table. So, for you, I don't know, CTOs, lead dev, manager for a tech team, we see that there is the technical part of it, but we are convinced that managing the developer experience will have an impact in other areas. I give you a few examples. For example, is there some UX matter? Obviously. Tooling, yes. Human resources, I will come on this point. In fact, when you free the developer experience, you have your tech team more, let's say, flexible, and in a way, this can lead and ease the innovation. When you have a team that there is so many steps, so many stones on the road, when you remove it, then you see that the pace of your team from pushing innovation is not absolutely the same. Another interesting topic, I will group the software quality, reduce technical debt, and control debugging efforts. We'll see that empowering the development team and bringing the developer experience, meaning is it flexible for you guys to, let's say, from idea to code to something in production, very flexible, then you will see that all these areas will be with a huge improvements for the team. Interesting topic, hiring and nurturing top talents. We all know that developer is a very scarce resource. And we discovered that taking care of the developer environment will have an impact on first for you to be able to hire top talents. And if their environment is very, very nice, and you can see that they are so happy that we wrote that they will never work another day, meaning I'm coding, there is no time, I'm free doing what I want. And we see that there is also an impact for keeping your talents inside the company. So, some takeaway for you, and it's not the truth, it's a vision to see the developer experience not just as UX or linking, using nice tools and so on. It's seeing developer experience as a whole, including some impact on the people, empower the people, okay, give feedback for them. Choosing best tools, I would say what I love to say is tools that play nice together. We see that there so many tools, we can find so many tools on the market. The point is for your needs, for your team, you have to choose the tools that are playing nice, that meaning the team is very, very comfortable with using this tool suite, and it's okay for your team, really. And last, I would say reduce time to feedback. Okay, give your team the way to have feedback the earliest possible to improve the way they are coding, the way they are bringing new best practices and so on for the team. It's the way we are pushing for the developer experience. Okay, I put on the slide what else? It's your best practices, and we know that it's a long journey to ease the developer experience and to ease for developer being really so happy. So what we want is developer happy. Thank you very much.
I still haven't gotten down the handshake, clicker, handoff. Okay, I really liked what Patrick was saying about developer experience as a workflow. I really like this. In marketing, we think about this a lot. We think about user onboarding as a workflow, and we want to optimize it. And you want to find this combination between delight and optimization. I really think that's a nice mental model for thinking about this. I got to spend a little bit of time with Cesar, our next speaker, at dinner last night. It was really enjoyable. I was really impressed with his background and how he came to the topic. It was very very exciting, very passionate. So I'm really excited to hear his talk today. So please welcome Typeform's Cesar.
Thanks, Neil. Hello. Hello, yeah. So I would like to invite you to imagine what is the experience of a developer in your average tech organization nowadays. If it's anything like I have experienced, it should look something like this. Nope. Something like this. It's a mess. I'm talking about daily stand-ups. I'm talking about performance reviews, retrospectives, being on call, handling incidents, coding, Slack, pair programming, string programming, mob programming, you name it. It's there. So within this context, if a developer comes along with a great idea on how to improve your product, your engineering processes, or your business, how likely do you think it would be for the organization to listen? If everybody is immersed in their own version of this chaos, how likely it would be for an organization to listen to an idea, align, and build on top of it when it comes from an unexpected place? I would say it's not that likely. But let's back up a minute. My name is Cesar Lugo, and I'm a software engineer at Typeform. And I'm here because we want to share with you how we have built a culture of bottom-up change that puts the developer in the driver's seat of introducing innovative ideas in the company. And you might ask yourself, why is that important? And you have probably heard in different podcasts or read in blog posts, or it has been spoken here, that what developers want nowadays is work-life balance. They want flexibility. They want good salaries and cutting-edge tools and all of that. And it's true, we want those things. There's no way around it. But is that it? Is that all it takes to recruit, retain, and engage developers? We think there's a bit more to it. We believe engaged developers don't want to just be a clock in a Victor factory machine. They don't want to passively wait for specifications to arrive or to be constrained to work on the problems that they're instructed to exclusively. There's nothing more grueling than being very busy building something you know is going nowhere. It turns out engaged developers want to connect the dots. They want to see how what they're building is making an impact. They're builders, and they want to see their own ideas come to life too. Even if they're big ideas, even if those ideas go beyond the scope of their teams. Engaged developers want to make a difference. And it feels fulfilling and good to say it, to make a difference. But how do we land it? How do we make sure that an organization is ready to listen, filter out, give proper feedback, and give a fighting chance to a new idea to make a difference? In Typeform, on top of a culture of psychological safety, inclusion, and experimentation, we have been relying on two artifacts that serve as guardrails and induce this bottom-up change organic movement. One of those artifacts is a quarterly hackathon that is called the High Sprint. In the High Sprint, anyone can propose a pet project to work on during the last 2 weeks of a quarter. This can be a product feature, a business improvement, this can be a social initiative or an internal tool. And anyone in the organization is free to drop what they're doing for these 2 weeks and join ad hoc teams to make those ideas a reality. Now, these 2 weeks are sacred. There's no meetings, there is no stand-ups, there's nothing of the sort. 100% of our capacity is dedicated to new ideas. It's organized chaos, and developers love it. They get to work with people they don't know from the organization, to face problems that they're not exposed to, and they get to just band together and build stuff without having to go through gatekeepers, without having to convince stakeholders and get buy-in. It's just building stuff. And it all culminates in a mega hyped demo session where all teams come together and showcase what they have built, like in a hackathon. And if you see on the right part of the screen, these are real engineers expressing excitement about being in a Zoom room, showcasing and demoing something. And if you've been in a room full of engineers, you know it's not an easy feat to get them excited about something. So we're pretty happy about it. So in the next weeks, what happens is that now product owners and engineering teams shop around and look for those ideas that we're promising. This is the moment of analyzing, of trying to productize these ideas, put them in team backlogs and get buy-in, right? And we have gotten a pretty nice return of investment out of it. We're not only breaking down silos and connecting people from a meat organization, but we are also building features that are fundamental for Typeform. One of those is the latest version of the latest major version of our form builder. This came out of a High Sprint. So, and note the form in Typeform. So, the form builder is a big stuff for us. This came out of a High Sprint. Another idea was an internal tool called the Interviewers app. This aims to gap the bridge between technical interviewers in a company and the recruitment effort. So this is an interface that stands in the middle of it so that recruiters can see which engineers are available, what type of interviews they can do, who they pair with in the last, and can keep scores and gives awards to engineers. So now we're making it visible and we're gamifying. So this has revolutionized the way that these two crucial parts of the company are working together. But the thing is, if there wasn't a High Sprint, I would bet that just trying to get the buy-in of stakeholders to build something like this, it would take more than 2 weeks to probably hear yeah, we don't have time for that. You need to focus on what you're working on. But because of the high sprint, we're reaping the benefits of these kinds of innovative ideas. So that's one of the two artifacts that we're using. The story of the second artifact is the story of an old problem in software development that you have probably faced yourselves. It's the problem of code quality, standardization, and keeping your code base tidy. Say you are a software developer that you're going around looking at your services, and you notice that logging is not consistent across the services that you maintain, making it very hard to debug in production. Or it could be error handling that is too sensitive in one service, missing altogether in the other, and you just need rework all around. It turns out that people are tired of having the same discussions about form versus feature in pull requests. Comments come around here saying, maybe this should be a standard, or maybe this should be consistent across the board. So, in a context of a small organization, one engineer, a motivated engineer, could be enough to start going repo by repo and start improving it. Maybe it could be creating the code owners, or it could be applying linting across all of the repositories, or improving, logging, error handling, or that JIRAs are properly linked into pull requests. But in the context of a growing organization, where you have hundreds of repositories and dozens of teams, this goodwill is not enough. So, in the face of this problem, our solution was the standards and proposal framework. Like in the high sprint, in the standards and proposal framework, anyone can propose an engineering standard. A difference is that an engineering standard is aimed to have a big impact across all of the repositories. This means all teams might need to work on it. So we are very careful to have discussions and see which standards are approved to become official standards at type. But once this is done, it becomes law. It's codified. So we have an internal tool that goes across all of our repositories and verifies the adoption of standards every day. And this tool, you might have guessed it, comes from a high sprint. So what we do is we aggregate all of this information by teams and across the company, and we can say something like, we have an 81% of current standards adoption. And this can be engineering standards, this can be security standards, quality standards, infrastructure, architecture, anything of the sort. But essentially, what we're doing, or what these two tools have together, is that they both start with an idea. They both start with the idea of a single developer that wants to have an impact beyond their own scope. And what we're doing is we're making the unexpected expected. And we're making sure to do that not only by creating a suggestion box so that people drop in ideas, but by actually investing time and resources so that developers can make a difference. Thank you.
Oh, it was timed well too. Okay, everybody, I hope everyone's doing well. I'm really excited about this next interview. I only got to meet Shana about a month or two ago because all of my friends went to go work for her, and I really just wanted to know who this amazing person was. And she's been really kind to give us some of her time, even though she's super busy building a company. I'm really happy to have her. Please welcome Shana, the CTO and co-founder of Evi.
Hi, Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to be here. Happy you made it.
Yes.
I every once in a while when I don't get to follow the day to day when I'm doing the MC thing, but every once in a while people be like, "We have a giant problem," and you made it. You made it onto that list.
I made it on time.
You made it into my ear while I was supposed to be planning something. So, really glad you made it here. Really glad to have you here. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit? I wanted to talk just a little bit about where you came from and how you came into being a co-founder and what that experience has been like so far. Why don't we just open up with a bit of your background and what were you doing before Evie?
Okay, so I'm Shauna. I'm the CTO of Evie. I've been a software engineer for the past 7-8 years. I grew up in Paris, went to do my studies at Northwestern in the US, and I was lucky enough to go straight to work for Apple on the messages team straight out of college. It was a pretty incredible experience. I spent almost 6 years working for Apple, mainly in Cupertino, but I came back to Paris about 2 years ago. And after 6 years at a great company, I wanted to do something radically different. And I felt like I had acquired the skill set to build from scratch. And so I left Apple in October and started my own company, Evie, with 2 co-founders, where I'm the technical co-founder and CTO.
So talk me through a little bit. What's it like transitioning from Apple engineer number 4,782 to technical co-founder? I imagine that's got to be a pretty big shift.
It was pretty crazy. It was nothing like I expected. People always tell you when you're building a company it's going to be crazy, but I felt like I had gone through some crazy times at Apple. I was working on iMessage, which is the #1 most used app in the US, so in a very, very tight-knit team. So I felt like I had experienced a lot, but it was very different because at Apple I was doing very specialized work. I was working in an app, so no distributed system, nothing in the network. I was working in Objective-C. Moving to building my own company, I didn't know anything about infra, DevOps, had never worked. I ended up doing microservices, had never done that. Learn Go, had never done that. Manage people, had never done that. I mean, everything was new.
A lot of had never done that.
Yes, pretty much only I've never done that. But the good practices are there. I feel like I had a really great education at Apple, and so you always, find your ground again, after the first few months.
Yeah, so moving away from a very, structured to a very unstructured format, I got to imagine building everything up from scratch was a bit of a learning curve, so to speak.
Yeah, it was tough. You feel like the mountain is so high that you don't even know where to start. You also know pretty quickly where your weakness is at. I think I'm a logical person. I know how to build software, so I wasn't very concerned about that aspect, but there was things that I couldn't just ramp up on. Like, I can't just magically become a DevOps. And so it was more about how do I figure out where my weaknesses are. Can I hire? Can I get a freelancer? What's the biggest risk factor if I end up not knowing this? And so, and everything was unstructured. People arrive and they want processes. They're asking, do you have issue management? And trying to replicate Apple, which is you plan for 1 year ahead, to planning like 1 week ahead, it's not replicable. And so it didn't really fit very nicely with what I was doing.
Yeah, I know. We talked about it before. I know that like in the marketing space, we talk a lot about like the biggest mistake early stage startups make is like hiring a Googler. And it's like, not because Googlers aren't great marketers, but because just the playbook that they have mastered, the thing you're optimized for is not very applicable to that early stage environment. Do you feel like you had to throw out a lot of the playbook to get through some of the hurdles?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because people always, they always talk about like big tech and GAFA and like trying to hire those engineers. I think we're great engineers, and I worked with really brilliant people at Apple. And some of them were, more agile than others in terms of like ramping up on new technologies. But some of them, we've been there for like 6+ years. We've just been doing that. And so we will ramp up, and we will ramp up well. But when you're at the very start and you're just trying to survive and, get your product out the door in 4 months, and it might require somebody like me 4 months to ramp up, like maybe gets, like I was new in Go. The first thing I wanted to do was like, let's get a Go expert in here. Nobody at a big tech company is doing Go. Go is startups. And so I think that's a better, that's a better target. And I keep mentioning DevOps, but you can't just hire one DevOps who only does DevOps because you're trying to hire like 2-3 people at most. And so at a big tech company, you can find a DevOps, but they're just doing DevOps. And so you need the person who's like super versatile, basically hire from other startups.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really
hire
like
people who've done it.
Yeah, because you had to move away from being a specialist to being a generalist, but you also have to build a team of generalists earlier on. So you see these areas where you know you can't ramp up on. You want to bring in people who are better, but even the people you choose, you have to choose people who are flexible.
I think it's interesting because I had, my evolution has been 8 months. At first it was like, definitely grab people who know exactly what they're doing, grab like the most specialized people. And we did this with some of our hires where we picked people who had done exactly what we wanted them to do at Evie. At the same time, people who have a really strong foundation can, if you're willing to give them time to ramp up, can be your strongest asset. And so now that I'm a little bit further, I'm back into, I want those like really strong talents. They will ramp up. I don't care if they don't know anything because now I'm a little bit more stable. But when you're really early on and you don't know what you're doing, maybe start by hiring like one generalist who can do everything. And then down the line, you can get those specialists and they'll figure it out.
Well, so it's safe to say you guys are in a 0 to 1 phase today, right? That's not a...
Yeah, we've built our product. It's been a crazy road. Lots of iterations. I think the biggest mistake is thinking that you're going to make the thing perfect, especially coming from such a structured company as Apple, where there's like designing and you're really getting to the finalized product by the time you ship it. Versus in a startup, you're trying to find your product market fit. Everything's changing. You don't have this amazing like technical spec in front of you and functional spec. So you kind of just have to like throw darts, move along, and readjust as you go.
It's fun because all of my like mental models for thinking about this come from marketing. But like one of the things we always say is like you can only project as far forward as you have a history. Right, so the earlier on you are, when you see a startup that's been around for 8 months and they say we want to change the way you eat food, you're like, okay, slow down. But then if Facebook's an 8-year-old company and they say we want to bring the metaverse, you're like, okay, that makes sense. They did this one big thing. You kind of have this proportional, and I imagine from an engineering front, it's kind of the same thing. Like the more solid of a foundation you have, the more you can kind of project out a solid roadmap.
I think it's interesting because I think also when you start a company, you come in with your own bias of what you've done. And so if you worked at a company that has a lot of legacy, you're thinking like, I now have the chance to write this legacy code, this future legacy code. And you think you have all the answers in hand to do it better. I think every code will not age very well. And I think there's things you can focus on and things you should not focus on, like trying to make your platform super optimized very early on is not a very good strategy. You don't really know how much you're going to need to scale. Building really good foundations so that people can arrive on your team and they understand how things are structured. Like I still added a lot of testing. I have a very clean layering. There was things where maybe it made me go slower, but I was like, I'm not making that mistake. Like I'm a senior engineer. I know how to layer properly, so let me do that. But there's a lot of things that you think you're going to be able to do, but there's just so much to do that it's not achievable when you're building. So just kind of pick your battles.
Yeah, how do you think about like picking battles now coming back? Is it about it's particular to you? So for you, it's about your strengths and your weaknesses, right? You said like I'm a senior engineer, i.e., I will not tolerate that not being done well.
I was gonna say, I think it's completely like the nitpicks of the CTO. I think any company you go to, everybody will say, "Oh, it's the CTO early on. They did all these things," and I don't think there's any wrong way to go about it. Some people might tell you, like, don't test anything, just go for it, iterate really quickly, and maybe they get product market fit a lot quicker because they keep everything very flexible. The more layers you have, the more when you try to break something, you have to like spend 4 hours fixing unit tests, let's say. And so I think it really depends, what the person leading the effort, is used to and what they feel strongly about. I'm not crazy about good practices, but I feel strongly about them, and so I try. I want people to arrive on my team and feel like, yeah, this is good foundation, and I think people have had that feeling arriving.
So now that you've brought in a few engineers, it's no longer the one person show. How do you feel like? What are you doing to make sure that that these generalists and or specialists are coming in and able to thrive? Like, what kind of environment are you trying to create around the very early, right, sub 1 year development organization to make the engineering team to make sure that you're optimizing for what matters to you?
I think the tough part is, once again, I keep referring to Apple, but when you work at a big tech company, there's this big culture that's there. Like, I didn't need any motivation when I worked there. I just love their product. Everybody's there loves it. Like, you just feel like pushed by this greater vision. I think as engineers, there's multiple things that can motivate you. You can have motivation because you're learning. You can have motivation because there's a really great technical challenge. You can be really motivated by the product. When you're really early on and you don't really know what your product is, the technical challenge isn't necessarily great at first as well, because you're doing a lot of foundation work. I think that's the tough part, because you think you're gonna, you have all these thoughts about culture, like, I'm gonna have all this engineering culture. Every person that gets added to your team really shifts that. And so I think in the end, culture at my stage is just this melting pot of engineers, and giving them room to express, what they like doing and what they don't like doing, and minimizing yourself a little bit. Because when you've been building the thing for, by yourself for a while, it can be hard to let go, but they're probably better in a lot of things. That the whole point is, like, you were not a generalist, you're not good at everything, and you did your best. So, leave room for the others to thrive in that environment.
You were telling me about some of my former colleagues and now your colleagues that you had hired. What does it take for you to feel like you can let go to an early develop? Like, what makes a good early stage startup developer in terms of I don't know, is it a mindset thing? Is it a culture?
I think mindset is the most important, because there's going to be a lot of changes and they have to be able to adapt and iterate. I think it can't be about the code needs to be amazing. It needs to be about what does the business need. They have to be very business focused, because sometimes they might be doing automation for a while because that's what the business needs, or infra, whatever it is. And I think it depends what their responsibilities are. If you take, one of Liam's ex-coworkers, Emily, who's our head of solutions engineering, I mean, she's brilliant. I realized I'm not very familiar with solutions engineering. Let's find somebody who knows how to do it. She had worked at an amazing company, and she is fully autonomous. It's not even she just arrived and she was doing her thing, and she's been incredible at it. And so some people are just that simple. They arrive and they're part of the leadership team, and they just belong.
They just plug in.
They just plug in and they're just doing great. And then some people, so I think it depends, where they're at, and are they ready for that? Are they ready for the unknown? And for instance, Emily doesn't seem very fazed by the unknown, and just takes it and keeps going.
And what excites you about the next 6 months, let's say? What's the most exciting thing that you're looking at on the horizon?
I'm excited to have customers using. We're an API first company, so I'm excited. When you're building APIs, you want to get feedback, and I think that's also the tough part, building without interacting super early with your future clients or adopters. So I'm excited to get that feedback, and I'm excited to see what it takes to scale. I think we're using Datadog. We're putting a lot of dashboard and monitoring and all these things in place, and I'm just very excited to get to see that aspect, and I'm sure we're going to have some bad surprises, but that's what I signed up for.
I was going to say, it wouldn't be fun if there weren't any bad surprises.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The lows are lows, the highs are highs.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, Shana, thanks for coming by and chatting with us. It was really great. Let's give a huge round of applause to Shana, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm really excited about our next theme. As I said at the beginning of the day, and as I keep saying, we really think about what are the biggest problems facing engineering leaders when we are putting this together. And one topic that kept coming up over and over and over was build versus run, was platform engineering, was site reliability engineering, or SREs. And I'm really excited about this next theme. I really feel like we've brought together some of the best organizations in Europe thinking about build versus run challenges. So let's jump right into it. I know I've got this lovely little clicker here. There we go. Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. So first, to kick us off, I'm really excited to introduce Fabian from Mano Mano to talk about building a cybersecurity culture inside of Mano Mano while they scale. So please give a huge warm welcome to Fabian.
Hello everyone. I am super happy to be here with you today. It is a great opportunity to talk about cybersecurity during this kind of event. My name is Fabian Marshall. I am 37 years old. I am 2 children, 3 soon, and I live at Bordeaux. During the past 10 years, I work very strong and with a strong conviction to help any organization, private, public or charity, against cyber attack. I'm not the best security expert. I'm not a security researcher. I don't work for government or national agencies, but every day I use people. I use human intelligence and ethical hacking to help any organization against cyber attack. So I'm gonna share my story at Mano Mano, and I will not tell you what you have to do about cybersecurity, but I'm gonna tell you what we have done at Mano Mano to put the cybersecurity at the center and to bring value. About Mano Mano, very quick, it is a European leader in gardening, home improvement, and gardening and do-it-yourself online. Is on more 4,000 sellers, more 7 million active customers, and more 1,000 employees in different countries. I joined Mano Mano in 2019 with the mission to build the cybersecurity strategy, team, and culture from scratch in a hyper-growth context. And it was a very fast track. At the beginning, in 2019, for example, we come from, there was only operational security by the production team. You go from 100 people in the tech department to 500 people in the tech department today. From 100,000 is the number of cyber attack we block to 1 million today per week. And we go from zero security team, zero security strategy, zero security solution. But it was the right time for Mano Mano at this time in 2019 to build cybersecurity. And today, it is a cybersecurity. It is a team of 8 people. It is a full internal security team, and we cover every domain in cybersecurity: application security, platform, governance, corporate IT, risk, and compliance. And the mission was to build a scalable. Because in this period of hypergrowth, it is very important to have a scalable cybersecurity strategy, a scalable, resilient, and mature strategy. And we work every day to make more autonomous every team in the organization, tech or not tech team, to be more autonomous and to have a security team, not a bottleneck, but an enabler to improve the security level of the company. So we have this mantra: you build it, you run it, and you secure it. The mission of the security team is is here to coach, to train, to develop the security expertise, to work with every teams to improve the security and to discover and find security vulnerability. As any management or executive position, it is very important to focus on the first 100 days. For example, in my case, during my first months, my first action was not to develop a technical security solution like firewall, antivirus, or anything. My first mission is to spend a lot of time with every team in the company, finance, legal, people in the call center, people in the warehouse, developer teams, just to listen, to understand what is the right security risk and mano, and to start building an open and transparent relationship with every teams, because it is my objective was to understand the security risk, but also my objective was to make the cybersecurity clear, accessible, visible, and very clear for everyone. It was my first mission, so it was a mission of communication, collaboration, and to start to make a security brand and mano. And I noted during this phase, it was very, very, very important at the end to have a key result, to deliver value, and to have a proof of the success of the cybersecurity strategy. And in my case, it was a bug bounty. I don't know if you know bug bounty. Bug bounty, very quickly, it is an initiative when we work with a security community around the world, where security experts can test every time your website or your marketplace to find security vulnerability. And you reward him if the security vulnerability is right. So it is a transparency approach. It is a transparent approach, and it is a good way to extend the security team with the security community and to improve very quickly your security posture. And the bug bounty, it was the first key result to show at all in the organization the value and the strategy of cybersecurity, because it is very easy to tell a full story for everyone when we speak about bug bounty, and it is a way, for example, for every developer to be proud of his job, because if I secure my code, the bug bounty is success. So the story is clear for everyone. At the beginning and again today, the cybersecurity strategy has two pillars. The first one is a human, and the second one is offensive. Why human? Because we believe people in the organization is the best element to defend the organization. As you know, 90% of cyber attack, the success of cyber attack for 90% is due with a final action from a human action. It is a reality. So it is very important to train every employee, not to perform awareness campaign with a newsletter. No, to train. What is it to train? It is to simulate, to test every day your employees. So to simulate phishing, to simulate fake software, to perform physical intrusion, and to test every day, and with a clear approach. After each operation, just spend time with the team to explain why we have this weakness in the company and how to improve and to remediate it. So it is a collaboration between security and the teams. So it is very important to have a strong culture for a long-term vision in terms of cybersecurity. And the second one is offensive. We want people thinking like an attacker, not like a defender. Because I don't believe the risk zero is possible. risk null is possible, is impossible. It is impossible to patch everything, every security vulnerability, and is not relevant. Is not relevant because it is very complex, it is costly, and there are new value. Why? Because we spend time to think like a malicious attacker, to test and to use the same techniques, the same tools, and to find for mano, in the context of mano, what is the right security vulnerability today. What can I exploit to attack mano? So in the security team today, we have we have different ethical hackers to test mano every time, and when we find a security vulnerability, we spend time to find the best solution to correct it and to block the attack. And offensive, it is a mindset. It is a mindset when we speak with people. It is a mindset when we deploy a security solution. It is a mindset when we need to think about the future, how to protect mano and its customer. Every day, there is a new security vulnerability. The evolution of number of vulnerability is very huge. And the vulnerability are more and more sophisticated. So it is very important you can keep the statu quo. It is very important to push forward and to challenge you every day to be sure you are right about your strategy. And for that, the external collaboration, it is a good way. Why it is a good way? Because with external collaboration, yes, it is important to have a strong influence inside mano, but outside is also very important. Why? For example, bug bounty. It is a good example. With the bug bounty, we open your marketplace and we collaborate with the security expert. And in this case, my mission it is just to have more ethical hacker on my site than malicious actor against me. And it is very important to develop expertise every day, to contribute in security community, to perform events, to perform security challenge, and for example, to write articles. For example, article it is a good metrics because when we are ready to write an article, it is because we are proud of the job. So it's a good way to improve your excellence. And also, it is important to have impact outside. For example, with the Hack for Values, at Mano, we have launched a new initiative to help charities against cyber attack. It is a free bug bounty. And this way, it is a good way to simulate your expertise and to challenge you every day and to stop the statu quo. And also, it is a good way to hire a player, to hire talent in your team. So it is my experience for being better. At Mano, as mentioned, we have an internal security team, and today it is a red team. What is a red team? It is an offensive security team as mentioned previously, to test every layer of your company. The founder, the finance team, the people in the call center, people in the warehouse, the developer teams. And it is a team to test what is the right vulnerability at Mano. And for example, we can perform simulation of phishing campaign. We can in the screen we can see picture when we have performed security intrusion at Barcelona in the Mano office, or a fake or malicious software like Zoom. And it is with the objective to tell a story and to find what is the right value in terms of security. And to finish with this approach of offensive approach, after it is very, very easy to deploy security solution, to deploy anything, because we are now you are transparent and clear with the organization, and everything is clear, and so every employee are okay to deploy security solution or anything to protect the company. And for example, today, more 25% of security alerts are reported by the employees, and it's very, very nice. So it is important to have this approach, to have cybersecurity at the center of the organization. And I want to finish with a short story, a funny story, a real story at Mano. The last year, someday, a homeless man takes refuge in the toilet, in the restroom, in the office at Mano. I don't know why, he stays in the toilet room. The first action, one of the founders said, "Don't worry," said to the Mano, "Don't worry, it's certainly a man of the security team during a red team operation." And no, it was a real security event. Yes, it is just a fun, but it is just to demonstrate you what is the culture today at Mano. So thank you very much, and if you want, we can take time just after to discuss together. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, really excited. I was just checking in, tons of people watching online, really enjoying the talk. I'm really excited that we got to get Owen to come out from Berlin. I got to meet him only a few months ago as we started talking about this conference. I'm a huge fan of Contentful. When I was working back at Algolia, they were like one of our reference companies. And when Owen told me that he had bootstrapped the incident response strategy inside the company, I really want him to come out and talk. So please give a warm welcome to Owen from Contentful.
Hello? Hey. Yeah, so my name is Owen. I'm from Contentful. If you don't know it, Contentful is an API-first content platform. It is helping teams to manage their content, orchestrate it, and deliver it to any digital touch point and do it really fast. So a little bit about me. I'm Irish. The name is a bit odd. This is a picture of the beautiful countryside in Ireland, not too far from my house, but I'm actually living in Berlin now. But for presentations like this, people mostly care about this. LinkedIn, where have you worked, what have you done? And I spent about 9 years working in Amazon, working in data centers and then in system engineering teams. Then I worked in Facebook, and just over 5 years ago I moved to Berlin and I started working in Contentful. It was about 90 people in the company, pretty small, but growing really quickly. So the day before joining Contentful, I don't know if people remember this, but there was a pretty big outage. This was on the 27th of February 2017. Pretty much most of the internet went down. So my first day in Contentful, so you go in, you get your laptop, you get all your bits and pieces, you meet your colleagues, and they tell me, yeah, we had a big outage yesterday because Amazon had a big outage yesterday, and we need you and this engineer to go and write about it. And I was thinking, okay, what about the team that's going to help us write this, or who's going to get the copy done right, who's going to actually get the legal sign off, all of those kind of things. And it was like, no, it's you and the engineer, go do it. And that's when I realized, yeah, this is different. And this is actually a picture of the original office that we were in, based in Berlin. So let me just go back a little bit then. So what was like incident response like at these tech giants? What did it actually look like? And basically it's build your own stuff. So they have teams and teams of people that are working on making sure that availability is pretty high. So with Facebook, they have their own Facebook monitoring services. They have Facebook paging and messaging. They have dedicated teams of pushers, or they did at the time when I was there, of pushing out the site, and teams dedicated to site performance. They have this concept of an incident manager on call. If there's a big incident or an outage, that these people would get paged in to help lead the event. And they have teams for public status updates. Amazon, somewhat similar, monitoring services that now a lot of people use as well, paging and messaging systems. They have a dedicated NOC for site outages, like a network operations center, and they dedicated availability teams. They also had call leaders, which is like the incident manager process at Facebook, and they had teams for public status updates. So there's a lot of similarities there. Essentially, you build, you own, you run your own services. They're pretty big on postmortems, and call leaders and incident responders are a big aspect. There's a lot of people working on availability, and there's no external services. Everything is actually, for the most part, built in-house. But there are some differences. Centralized versus decentralized, I found that in Amazon, everybody was kind of brought together in big war rooms or in very large calls to try and figure out what was going on. But in Facebook, it was a bit more decentralized. And then blameless postmortems, one of the companies wasn't very strong at that. The other was pretty strong. I'll let you guess which one. So then how do we bring that to incident response at startups? What does that look like? What do you bring forward? And essentially, if I was to summarize it in one term, it's you have to do incident response using SaaS. You don't really have a choice. You don't have a development team that you can actually go and say, spend a year working on this thing. So there are quite a few benefits in this. You can set up a service in hours. So if you want to get a paging service, then you go to PagerDuty, you put in your credit card, you sign up, you get your users in, now you have a paging service. You can get some of the best in-class services out there to help you with your incident response. And if you don't like it, or if something's not working, then you just quit and you go somewhere else. But it means that you can focus on your business. Because most of the startups out there are not getting into the paging game. They're not getting into the monitoring game. They want to build something for their use case for their customer. So by just buying the service or getting it somewhere else, you can actually really focus on your business and not worry about these types of things. But it does come with challenges. There's just so many services. And this is one of the first things coming into a startup that I was struck by, learning about all of these new services and what they mean. And like I'm talking about, say, for instance, management, you've like paging, schedules, status page updates, dashboarding, communications, and like for service monitoring, there's internal, external monitoring, all of the different monitoring services. Observability now is a big thing, and logging as well. And you have to actually manage those services. So managing them is like managing all of the contracts, managing all the costs, and actually managing all of the relationships with these. All of the CSMs will want to talk to you. They'll want to do quarterly business reviews, things like that, across all of your services. So it's just a pretty high cognitive load. And there's even more complications because on-call expectations. Most companies will talk about, we want to build it, own it, run it mentality. This is this kind of DevOps culture that we hear about, where, you know, if you build something and if it breaks, you should get paged for it. And what I found was with US companies, you know, if you own a service, you should expect to get paged for that service. Like, that's just it, and that's okay. But in German companies, and I imagine in French and other EU companies, it can actually be optional to be on call. It's not something that everybody is actually going to be doing. So how can you own your service if you can't be on call for it? And how do you actually distribute that so that there's somebody on call for all of the services and they actually understand what's going on? And as well, like when you're responding in a startup, you're probably in one location, you're only in one site. And what happens if somebody gets paged at night? Who's going to work the next day? Or if you actually have these long-running incidents, who actually does the night shift? And I remember we were actually on an event in the early days, and you know there was an outage with a dependency that we had, and they said, look, this is going to go through the night. And we realized we just had to send some people home and some people had to stay up. Luckily, it was a rare event, but these things have to happen, and you have to think about it. So on this particular case, my recommendation, first and foremost, is compensate well for on-call and for being engaged. Holding a pager means that you actually change your life and change what you're doing on that day. So just be very, very careful about or making sure that you actually compensate people really well for this. And work with your legal and HR teams to actually draft up a contract that is very beneficial. There's lots of laws and regulations around this. Just don't do it lightly. It'll take you a couple of months to actually set this up. I think we're going on our third version of our on-call contract. So talking about tips, I'm telling you about the complications and the bad things. What are the tips of the success? what would I recommend if you're a startup and you're trying to figure this out, or you're having some issues with your on-call setup, your incident response setup, how would you do it? The first foremost thing I would say to you is reduce your pager pain at all costs. This is the thing that is going to tell whether you can actually build a scalable system or not. So you should really be aiming to get to single-digit pages per day, per week and then per day. And it's really, really important that there isn't a sense within the company that there's like cannon fodder in front of pages, that engineers are just there and the next day we're not following up or we've no issues. So for any time that you have pages or issues, make sure that you're taking it seriously, that your leaders are taking it seriously, and that you're bringing up the fixes and the bugs back into teams. The second thing I would say as well is use bots, use Slack bots, use auto actions, chat ops. So it can do so many things. You know how you actually start an incident. If you're trying to find out who is on call, you're trying to engage people, reporting status, looking up services, or if you actually want to divert traffic or do something like that. Because we all know that incidents don't happen 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, everybody's caffeinated, everyone's in the office, it's fine. It's usually about 7 o'clock, everybody's commuting home, or it's maybe 2 in the morning and you're stressed and the on-call person is panicked and they don't know what to do. Make it easy for them to do all of the standard steps really, really well. Define clear roles in your incident response as well. So whether it's an incident lead, the person who is actually doing the investigation, whether it's your incident commander, who might be doing the communication or orchestrating across multiple teams, and have clear post-mortem owners. One anti-pattern that teams get into is whoever got paged owns the follow-up, but it might be a different team that actually owns the follow-up to fix the service. So whoever owns the service that broke, the manager from that team, not the engineer. So if an engineer makes a change and it breaks production, don't make that engineer do the post-mortem. They should be involved, but it should be the manager for that team that takes that responsibility. Yeah, and then hold post-mortems and ops reviews. So post-mortems help you learn from outages. This is something that's standard across the industry. But especially when you have a lot of operational noise, you can just forget or, oh yeah, we didn't get to it, it's fine. We know exactly what's happened. But just try and make it as easy as possible. The barrier for doing the good post-mortem is pretty low. There are plenty of templates. I have some resources here that I can show you at the end, and just find a template on the internet, go through it. It's pretty straightforward. And what you're essentially doing is trying to look at, we have the big outage, a big error. So your post-mortems should be really on like one specific event that is like a very acute event, as opposed to your ops reviews. And ops reviews are tracking things over a longer period of time. So like how much time were we spending in incidents? Reviewing SLOs or SLAs. Making sure that the teams actually come and report their status. Like the teams should understand how their services are running, what do alerts look like, what does latency look like, what does bad look like, and then come and report on those. And you have to be reviewing over longer periods of time because, say for example, this is the type of thing that you should be looking in an ops review over the course of a month, because you mightn't actually trigger on this, but you might see a degradation over time in latency. You still have a worse scenario that you had early in the year, but it mightn't have actually triggered an outage or alert. And have backup plans. This is something that we've been looking into quite recently as well, where, what happens if you use Slack or Zoom to manage your incident and they're down? Now, where do you go? If your monitoring is down, do you have something that's actually monitoring your monitoring systems? And what happens if you have two incidents at the same time? I remember we used to have like an incident Slack channel, and then two came up and we were like, okay, where do we go to now? So sets a lot of those things up. And I guess people have seen in very large events that affect cloud providers, if one of them goes down, half the internet goes down, and you will see lots of times where you'll go to somebody's status page and they're having an outage, but the status page provider that they're using also has an outage because they share the same dependency. So what do you do in that case? So really think about it. So what have I learned from all of this? What are the key takeaways? What is it that I recommend to you? And it's really that motivated people and structured process. That is key. Like if you take nothing away, that's the main thing. Because coming into a startup, the thing that I was so surprised about was just how motivated and bought in people were. If you're in a large company, you can kind of get this sense of like, oh, there's an issue, but that team owns it, that on-call owns it, or I'm not on call, it's not my problem. But in a smaller company, lots of people were just jumping in, kind of going, hey, how can I help, what can I do? They just don't necessarily have all of the knowledge or the coordination to do it. So take all of that energy, take all of that motivation, bring people in, give them structure, process, and this will just help you no end. So I've been Owen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Owen. Keep forgetting where I put this. Okay. Coming up next, I'm really excited to have our next speaker come up on stage. Earlier today, we had a few product demos. I really like to mix together, you know, we're engineers. Engineers like to see stuff. We want to see it in action. I'm really excited to bring our next speaker up on stage. Please welcome on stage Jose from VivaTech. Give him a round of applause. Jose's got a little bit of technical stuff. Yeah. Are you okay with the microphone while you do stuff? Yeah. Okay. That's you? You're all set? You don't have any slides?
Yeah, I do, but I'm just going to share the screen.
Perfect. Okay. We'll let Jose get set up technically, and then he'll take it away. It is, huh? Yeah. I feel like the air conditioning is losing its light. Yeah, I might have to move the jackets in.
Yes, they have some. Not like 2 years ago.
Remember that? Like 2017 or something? Usually,
mirror displays, maybe?
There we go. All right, thank you very much. Hi everyone, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jose, and I'm the founder and CEO of VivaTech AI. And we're basically productizing site reliability engineering to deliver reliability intelligence for cloud-native organizations. Now you're probably asking, so what is reliability intelligence? So reliability intelligence is the practice of using service level objectives, or SLOs, which basically were just addressed in our last talk right now, at scale to continuously improve the quality of service. So basically when you track reliability indicators against the business goals, they become easy and accessible to be discussed across the entire organization. And the goal is to drive actionable insights from the data that you're already collecting from your products, services, and infrastructure. VivaTech AI helps companies basically measure and improve the reliability of their products and their services. We're productizing practices that were initially created by Google, and we're helping leverage the SLOs into actionable insights and actually set up the service level objectives within the context of their product catalog. This approach was actually created by Google, and it has been adopted worldwide by leading tech companies like Netflix, Zalando, Klarna, and a number of others, but using custom in-house technology in order to do so. So what we are doing is actually leveraging these practices and making them accessible for everyone in every single company by basically integrating with their existing monitoring, observability, and cloud providers and turning it into actionable insights in a way that basically helps them save a lot of engineering time in setting all of these up. But let's get to the fun part and actually show you the products. So engineering teams actually set up the service level objectives seamlessly in the Tech AI, and then they're able to create these customizable views so that they can visualize their SLOs from multiple perspectives and within different time frames. And then there are multiple use cases that you can do with this, but let's look at an example of how you can leverage SLOs to basically do reliability roadmap planning. And this is basically where engineering leaders answer questions like, out of all of the user journeys that we're providing for our customers, which ones are actually impacted? So basically, you can see that out of all of the user journeys in here, almost every single one of them is compliant. By toggling the non-compliant only toggle, apparently none is non-compliant. Okay. Okay, there we go. Damn internet. All right. So basically, you can see that there are two user journeys that actually have been impacted within this time frame that we're looking at. This way, the teams can now focus their efforts only on the user journeys that are actually impacting their customers, and they can actually drill down and see what are the services that are impacting these user journeys, and drill down all the way to the actual service level objectives that are not meeting the goals. So in this case, we can see that it's a payment gateway service that is impacting the card checkout user journey, and that they started having reliability issues, more specifically availability issues, starting from May 18. And then they can actually drill down into the actual raw metrics that are being used to calculate the service level objective. This way, they can easily prioritize what and where they should be allocating their engineering efforts to improve the reliability, for example, in the next sprints. Now, like almost everyone in here can probably agree that when you do a release, you probably pay a lot of attention to the quality of service after you do the release. So basically what you can also do is set up real-time reliability monitoring views. There we go. You can set up real-time reliability monitoring views. Bear with me. And you can actually see what are the services, for example, like in this case, that after a release become impacted. Let's say that, for example, like in here, there was a release at 8 a.m. and then, as you can see, the service for the payments gateway was actually compliant all the way up until 8 a.m. Then you can see after the release, it started becoming degraded. And you can actually see that the user journey that was impacted was the card checkout. Then you can actually use this to mitigate the impact on the customers before it actually becomes worse and impacts more customers and the business, and you lose money, and then you actually have to wake up on-call engineers after a lot of the impact is done and become super stressed. This way, you can immediately roll back, for example, the release or revert the changes that you did so that you mitigate these impacts. So reliability intelligence can also be used to improve your existing incident management processes and even your alerting processes. Once again, regarding the talk that was just before this one. And the key points that you need to take into consideration is that these are the types of alerts that your engineers and your on-call engineers usually receive. And the problem is that they lack context. Basically, these alerts are focused on the cause of the issue and on how the technology is working, but then it becomes significantly hard to understand what is the impact that these alerts has on the user journeys, on your customers, on the business, and even to check, first of all, if it's a false positive or not, and what is the blast radius of these impacts. So we can all agree that if we're evaluating customer impact, we should be alerting not based on the customer, not on the cause, but actually on the symptoms of these impacts. And with SLO-driven alerting, basically, you can actually see the impact that the alerts have on the customers, on the services, on the business, and you can easily prioritize, first of all, filter out all of the noise of the alerts, and you can actually prioritize between all of the different alerts and see what are the services that are actually impacted, and see all of these within the context of your product catalog. And the best part is that you can actually do this in a really easy way and set all of this up in minutes. So basically, since the Tech AI integrates with your existing monitoring and observability stack, it actually scrapes all of your metrics, monitorings, logs, traces, all of that, and that it actually figures out what are the service level objectives that you can create with the data that you've got available. This way, with one click, you can easily leverage the out-of-the-box SLO recommendations to quickly create the SLO, saving your engineers a lot of time without having to hire like domain experts to do this. Or, of course, you need to hire the domain experts, but using them to basically drive the business forward, not doing things that can be automated. And you can easily see like the historical behavior of this service level indicator so that you can easily decide what is the acceptable goal for your customers and how well your services have actually been performing. And then you can actually provide some context as to what it is that you're monitoring so that you can basically assign this SLO to a specific entity within your product catalog. So let's say that you're monitoring a specific service. This way, you actually have context of what it is that you're monitoring. So basically, I know that this was really fast and like it's probably fast and not enough to go over in 5 minutes. But feel free to contact me afterwards. But what I really wanted you to take away is that leveraging the Tech AI to apply reliability intelligence at your organization can help you create customer-focused alerts that actually help you identify the impact, prioritize, and mitigate the alert fatigue for on-call engineers, which actually makes your entire company move faster, promotes reliability ownership across and accountability across the different engineering teams, and even promotes communication across product engineering, customer service, customer success. It increases engineering satisfaction because they're not bothered with alerts and they're not bothered with things that are really painful and stressful, like solving incidents with a huge pressure. And it increases the ROI of your reliability investments since you know exactly where you can invest your time. Remember, you cannot improve what you don't measure. Thank you very much, and I hope you have an incredible day.
Okay, I feel like that's a really good transition into our next panel. Why don't we jump right into it, and why don't we welcome up our three panelists for this next talk, Julien, Vianney, and Nicolas. Give them a huge round of applause. So guys, I built a session of this conference just for you. I hope you've enjoyed the last few talks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Not every day the SREs get their day.
We are in the lights today, so that's fine.
Yeah,
for once.
No, it was a good idea, very good one.
Good. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad it was just for you. So one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this topic is I feel like we often spend a lot of time looking at application engineering. And we often talk about improving engineering organizations so that we can build more, and we often kind of leave in the shadows a little bit platform engineering, and at Scaleway platform engineering is a big function. The platform side is a big part of it, and so I kind of wanted to start with a really easy question, which is maybe what is platform engineering?
I guess there is many great definitions, but mine is something about being internal provider, internal service and tooling provider for a wider tech organization. We are engineers, mostly SREs or platform engineers. The name is here. And we are at the service of others engineers.
Indeed, we are providers for the other teams within R&D's organization, and we want to empower them. We want to give them the ability to be autonomous.
Yeah, we'll have the same kind of definition. I think platform engineering is mostly helping developers on the day-to-day activities. So the point is to offer them managed services like database, queuing, and so on, and also dev tools like CI/CD, just to be sure they can be efficient. I think that's the main goal of a platform team.
Yeah, it's really like the engineer's engineer, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the internal, the under the hood, right? You're what's underneath the engine.
Yeah, like Alice in Wonderland, you have to go downstairs.
Yeah. It's the rabbit hole. Yeah, I know. I've got a few of our platform engineering team in the office in Lille, and it's really when you sit down with them to talk about the things they're thinking about, it's really you get deep into the layers very quickly. We've got this notion. So it's very clear for me who the internal client is, right? I mean, who you're thinking about, right? Application engineers are thinking about the end user. Your end user is the engineer. What do you think the mission is? Like, how do you describe internally when you think about like quarterly goals for the team? What are you driving towards, sort of aspirationally?
I guess sometimes it's about creating and maintaining specific services to sustain growth or to sustain a specific team that has a specific need. And sometimes it's about being the best advisor for a team that needs some guidance to how to use this tool, this monitoring tool. It depends from the size of the team and the business, I'd say.
Yes, and also we are the warrant of security for if you operate a cloud provider, you would want like your team to use it at best, like for it to be operational and to be secure. You don't want one just to open like a random internet access to some machine to perform like an easy operation. So you would have to give the proper tooling for that and the proper observability tools. So you're an enabler.
A key mission of platform. I will say, again, helping developers, and I think one of the points is to be capable to give them time to create the good value. And in fact, value for them is not to manage a database cluster or any kind of infrastructure. Their value is to create products. And in fact, I think the key mission of a platform team is to be capable to give the time to product team to create value and to create products.
Okay, that seems pretty clear to me. What do you think, like application engineering teams, if we broadly kind of label them that for today, what do they think they need from platform engineering?
It differs from team to team, but sometimes sometimes they want just a guidance. Sometimes they want us to do all the work, and we are also responsible to have the right approach. For instance, with some teams, we prefer to have an incubating approach, like, hey, come in the team for a week, have a sort of a live my life, and we'll co-build the feature you need or the database you need. And sometimes it's more about, we have this off the shelf, just take it and build your feature.
Mainly, I believe they want to be focused more on the value they can deliver, and they don't want all the hassle of the operations. So they want like frictionless deployment. They want like frictionless observability. They want to just develop something, have the ability to deploy it, and then just to observe it without any issue. They don't want to bother a team. So, hey, my deployment is not working.
What do they want? Very, very difficult question, because it depends absolutely of the type of product you are building first, and also the size of the platform team, because when you are 2 or 3 in a team or 20 or 40, you can do the same. So it's very hard to answer, but I will say what they need from us is to be capable to determine the optimal point between development and operation. If platform team can success to exactly set this cursor at the good place, I mean, the product team will not have to do a lot of operations. They can focus on development, and this way they will be efficient. So I think what they expect from us is to be capable to set this cursor properly.
Okay. Well, so what if I flip the question on its head then? What does platform engineering need from application engineering to succeed? Is the question that never gets asked or never gets answered.
Big gentle.
Commitment? I don't know.
Yeah. Tell me about commitment. Tell me about that.
Like, again, it differs from companies to companies, mostly because of the size of the team. When you're 2, 5, 10 people platform team working for 200 engineers, of course you will ask more from every developers. And the other way around, if you are a big platform team, it means you can remove a lot of frictions at once from the teams. So it depends on how you are organized as a tech org, I guess.
Mainly, of course, it depends on the team. Some of them want to to have like a one-click button to be able to perform like a wide variety of things. Some others want to have like the knowledge of what they are doing. They don't want simply to have like a tool that does everything for them. They want to properly understand what is underneath. So it depends on a lot of things, but mainly they are engineers. So they want to understand what is under the hood for like the knowledge, and I think it's good.
I think cooperation, and sometimes for product team it's hard to understand the value added we can provide to them, and I'm not going to blame them, because my feeling about that is that platform team need to be service oriented. That means it's us to show them that we can have value and you can help them. So of course they have to be open-minded to be sure we can work together. But at the end, it's up to us to define exactly what they need and to be capable to provide a service that will be helpful for them.
And it's funny that you brought it up, because this was one of the things when we spoke a few weeks ago. Like, one of my big takeaways from the conversation with the three of you is like very clear and common mission, very different means of executing on that mission, right? So Nicolas, very service oriented. Julien, how do you stand up against that?
I guess so. Remember the what I was saying about the size of the team? I'm working with a very small platform team and a few hundred developers. So we have to be smart. We have to work with what open source can offer, with what SaaS services can offer. And sometimes we are just, advisors. When I know that maybe Nicolas is building and maintaining services, we can't. So we have to be smarter and find ways.
Yeah, in VNA, a different approach yet again, right?
Yes, we want to empower people as you guys, but we don't want to work for them. We don't want to pull their releases into production. This is their job. They're building it. They're running it. We've heard that many times today. So we want to give them like the proper tooling, the proper methodologies for them to be fully autonomous. And of course, we'll be here forever to be able to help them, like to define something, to do like the good architecture, secure, etc. And yes, we want to be focused more on our roadmap, because we want to provide like internal tooling also for the company. But still, they would need us at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's the I want to say the product approach, the advisory approach, and the service approach. When you guys heard that, is that normal? Like, when you think about it, do you think, oh yeah, there's these three different ways of approaching it, or how did you guys? How do you see the method of the others?
It was very funny to meet, because in fact we have the same job, clearly, and we have a very same philosophy to approach the platform engineering. But it's true that I think on the field we are all doing differently, because the company we are in are different. So it's normal, but I think we share the same kind of goal, which is for our product team to reach the point where you can say, okay, they build it, they run it. This is the target, and this target can be implemented differently in different company.
Yes, we don't have the same job at all. We have the same job, but it's not the same job. I mean,
you don't have the same day to day.
Yeah, it's not the same day to day. It's not the same companies. So if you don't have the same product, whether you're a SaaS company or you're a service provider, it all depends on that. But at the end, we are all enablers. So this is what matters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about efficiency. We said it multiple times. It's about experience, how our developers experience their daily work, how easy it is to create a new service or to maintain an existing one in the end.
Okay, so if you all have the same job but completely different jobs, as you put it, what is platform engineering's North Star metric? Maybe metric is the wrong word. We talked about SLAs, SLOs, and we can talk about that, and that's fine. But maybe like what's the common destination, right? You all kind of said we're all trying to get the same thing done. It's just different methods based on the industry or the product or the culture of the company. So how do you know that you're on the right path?
Operations, mostly around operations. We want, as I mentioned, frictionless operations. We want people to be like autonomous. We don't want them to get to us to do something. So if our job is to have the minimum of operation possible for a given subject, whether it's on the platform team or on the engineering teams. So we try to then to reduce that, to automate at most.
And yeah, I agree. And I'll add, we have this new thing that we're trying to achieve internally is about having an NPS, like a satisfaction score among developers. And it's a pretty new way to measure how confident they are about the tooling, how easy it is to create new features every day. And it's bringing new lights on what we do every day. Yeah.
Yeah, the North Star, I would say, customer-oriented, because in fact we are serving people which are working with us on a daily basis. So we need to keep this focus, and this is really our focus to serve them properly. So I say, yeah, customer-oriented, maybe also impact-oriented, because what we are doing at platform need to have a positive impact on them. If not, it's useless, clearly. And the second, I will say, rock solid, because in fact, in Scaleway, all the product we are giving to our customer are based on our product internally. So if we fail, they fail. So for us, high availability is a key metric, and we have to be careful with that. So I would say rock solid. Yeah.
I remember, talking with Jose a few months ago. We talked about this. We were talking about SLAs and SLOs, and I felt like there was a really good question, which was, at what point does run override build? At what point do resilience issues bleed into application engineering, where we say we need to stop working on new things and we need to get this? And the incident response, there's a fire in our house or whatever the metaphor you want is. The thing is down, it needs to be up, but at some point there's a sort of longer issue. And how do you if collaboration and commitment are the things that you guys need, how do you get that alignment to make application engineering, or to align with application engineering on how to prioritize run problems rather than build problems, let's say?
Part of the answer is to give back responsibility and ownership to the feature teams, to the product teams. So for instance, like if we take the definitions of an SRE team from the Google's SRE book, like every team should have a budget, and every time they exhaust their budget, their error budget, let's say, they should be the one paying attention to operations, stopping the work, having a look to whatever monitoring they have access to, and we should be here to help them, but not do the work for them. It's balance between helping them and doing work.
Yes, indeed, definitively it's a good approach, and I do remember that in the old days a team would have to allocate a quarter within the year just like to fix all the bugs, is the issue, and then could go back on features. But now we can't allow that, given like the growth of companies, all the challenges we have to face, and then at some point the teams with their ownership would have to monitor and have like a credit on that, and we're working on that actually, so it's great.
At a point, you can't live with your legacy. That means you need to do something with all the stuff which are not working properly. And I think it has to be a company commitment, almost. That means that you need to get the support of your top management to solve recurrent issue, and to be sure that product team have the time to work on it. And it's difficult sometimes because they have a huge roadmap. They are pushed a lot to release new feature and new products, but sometimes you have to slow down and to address the low-hand issue, which are very important because otherwise you can't scale. So it's very important that your top management is okay with that.
Awesome, guys. Well, I really hope that we succeed in creating that build and run alignment that we get, whether it's a service-oriented approach, a product-oriented approach, or an advisory approach. I hope that we create that commitment and cooperation going forward. Thank you guys for coming out and shedding light
on it. Thank you for the panel.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let's give them a huge round of applause. Okay. moving forward, I'm really excited to welcome our next guest coming all the way over from across the pond. So we're going to be joined on stage by Nigel. He is an independent expert on Kubernetes. I've asked him to come out today and talk to us a little bit about where Kubernetes is going, and he's really going to help us transition into the last theme that we're going to talk about today, which is where do we see the world going in this sort of post-cloud computing, post-software world. A few years, 15 years ago, there was this really great article that said software will eat the world. I don't know if maybe you've heard this. This was a mantra for a generation of startups. Software will eat the world. And it was a really great article that basically foretold how cloud computing and how the advent of smartphones would fundamentally change life. And arguably, we're there today. As we see around us, there's a startup for everything. There's a consumer product. My toothbrush sends text messages to my phone, and it posts to my Slack to let people know that I'll be late to a meeting. We're there. That's not even weird what I just said. You actually don't know if it's real or not. That's how far we've come. And so what I like to do is take some time and really think about, okay, now that we have these amazing things, and in the cloud world, one of the most amazing innovations is Kubernetes around how we deploy infrastructure. And I wanted to kind of dive into it today, and I couldn't think of a better person to do that than have Nigel join us and talk to us a little bit about what we can expect from the world of Kubernetes and over the next few years. So with that in mind, you can take it away. But I think because it's on yours. Yeah, you're all set. Okay, let's give a huge round of applause to Nigel.
Okay, thank you. So I've made a last-minute decision to go with my own laptop instead of the screen, so I don't have a clicker. I'll have to move forward. This should be kind of an easy one. The future of Kubernetes, as we're going to see in a slide or two's time, is pretty much world domination. But we will get into like 4 or 5 particular things that we should expect to see from Kubernetes going forward. Anyway, this is me. So just a very kind of brief background. I've worked with containers and Kubernetes since pretty much the beginning. Well, not the beginning of containers, but the beginning of Docker. And then when Kubernetes came along, I didn't dump Docker, but I kind of read the writing on the wall and made that switch to Kubernetes, which I see more and more organizations and individuals themselves doing now. I've had conversations for a very long time. I think when you write books and stuff, there's a tendency for people to think that you know everything, which is totally not true, of course. But they'll come to you and they'll ask you questions all the time. And I was constantly being asked by people, should I be deploying Kubernetes? And it was always like a few years ago, like probably not for most people. It's really complex, it's really hard. You can get away with maybe Docker Swarm or something else. Then it kind of changed to be like, yeah, it's probably not for you just yet, but keep a close eye on it. Whereas now when I'm talking to people, it's like, wow, if you're not on board with it now, you need to get on board. Now, this is not for everybody, but maybe 90% of people now. If you're not on board or considering getting on board, you run quite a huge risk, I think, of being left behind. Anyway, so that's me. Like I said, the future of Kubernetes is pretty much world domination. I did want to have like what is it? Is it from the Austin Powers movies, like Dr. Evil or whatever? I'm having a brain freeze now. But look, let's get to the content, right? So I think we should expect from Kubernetes going forward that it's going to orchestrate a lot more than just containers. So it's super famous at the moment for being like the de facto platform for managing and orchestrating container-based workloads. However, there's significant work going on within the wider ecosystem to sort of collapse or fold in a lot more workload types to Kubernetes. So I think going forward, certain projects will start to see us using Kubernetes to manage virtual machine workloads and also serverless workloads like function as a service workloads. And I think the idea there is that if we can, going forward, organizations and individuals that want to make investments in technology for the future not only want it to be there for the long run, the technology, so they want to be able to see the writing on the wall that Kubernetes is going to be here like forever-ish. But they also want to say, well, if I'm going to make that technology investment in Kubernetes, I'd love to be able to do more than just containers on it, right? I've still got a bunch of VM workloads, and I'm going to have more VM workloads. I'm going to have function as a service, like serverless type workloads. And if we can fold all of those into Kubernetes or have Kubernetes manage them, it's that much better technology investment. I think as well as folding in, though, different workload types to Kubernetes, we're also going to fold in intelligence. So operators within Kubernetes allow us to, say, take domain-specific knowledge, like let's say knowledge of how to deploy a particular database in a highly available, high-performance way. And instead of investing all of that in some like ugly scripting, a much better way is to invest that knowledge into an operator in Kubernetes. So I think the point from this is that going forward, we should expect Kubernetes to do virtual machines, serverless workloads, containers, and sort of move a little bit further up the stack as well and fold in application intelligence. Evolving to become the dark matter. So I'll get around to what I mean by this, but Kubernetes was hard. Well, it was super hard, and it's still a little bit hard. But a lot of people opted to take a managed Kubernetes approach to be able to like onboard themselves to Kubernetes. So let's say an organization has said, yes, we feel that Kubernetes is the future for us, but look, it looks really complicated to build something that's highly available and high performance. Instead of me hiring staff and trying to do that all myself, I'll just go and I'll trust one of my cloud providers, let's say AWS or Google or whoever, and I will allow them to build for me a highly available Kubernetes cluster that they'll take care of updating. And it was that easy on-ramp for people to say, look, I'll just take that off the shelf from AWS or from Azure or wherever. And I think generation 1 of managed Kubernetes services would manage the control plane for you. We're starting to see managed Kubernetes services manage your worker nodes as well, so a lot more of the infrastructure. But I think the end goal is really that Kubernetes is just there, and you almost don't even know it's there. And that's the kind of play on words I'm making here with dark matter. Like, we know apparently that dark matter is there, and it makes up whatever it is, I don't know, 70% of the universe, and nothing works without it, right? But I have no idea anything about it, but I get on with life, and if there was no dark matter, I couldn't live my life. Well, we're going to get to the point, hopefully, where Kubernetes is just there in the background, and we focus on delivering applications and delivering services and delivering features to customers. And ideally, an organization doesn't even have to understand Kubernetes. Somebody might point out, oh, that's Kubernetes behind the scenes, right? And the business and the application and the end users are like, okay, no idea. But it's powering what they do. So we're seeing a lot of people use managed Kubernetes at the moment, but I think going forward, the kind of managed Kubernetes we will see will kind of fold in and collapse in more of the infrastructure, more of the application management as well, to the point where it just exists, and we, for the best part of it, we don't know it's there. And I think the take-home point there really is that more and more work and services will run on Kubernetes, but we will need less and less Kubernetes expertise within the majority of organizations. That expertise will live with the major clouds and people like that. One API to rule them all, playing off one ring to rule them all. So, I don't know, Kubernetes is like, there's a general consensus that it is the de facto API or the de facto solution for deploying cloud-native applications. Things are building around it, okay? But it's also, it's got like this, it's already got built-in authentication, built-in auditing, built-in rate limiting, all these kind of foundational things. In fact, it's got a bunch of built-in features that allow us to deploy and manage workloads on Kubernetes, but very much basic workloads. So I'm saying out of the box, Kubernetes comes with all this stuff, authentication, auditing, the ability to deploy simple applications. But the future really is in custom resources or in extending that Kubernetes API so that third-party applications look, smell, and feel as if they're native Kubernetes applications. So the thing is, like I said before, the writing is all over the wall that Kubernetes is the future. And as part of that, just about every tech organization out there is putting Kubernetes first in its kind of strategy with its applications and things. So these applications will come to Kubernetes. I saw it a lot in the last couple of years with not applications, okay, but let's say infrastructure, okay. So a lot of third-party data management companies and storage companies were bringing their storage services that would have like highly available, high-performance storage that replicates, it does snapshots, it does all this clever stuff. But it's folded into Kubernetes because they've extended the Kubernetes API to kind of incorporate their storage systems to the point where, as a developer or an operator, it just looks like Kubernetes to me. So that's like kind of a major thing to look out for Kubernetes in the future, that it's not just going to be the core things that come from upstream Kubernetes, but the entire ecosystem is going to build into it. So infrastructure and applications will just run on Kubernetes and, like I say, look, smell and feel like they are Kubernetes. Abolishing cloud serfdom, right? So back in the day, in and around the UK and Europe at least, there were like a handful of lords and ladies and aristocracy that owned all of the arable land, or all of the good land that could be farmed and could be worked on, right? And generally speaking, if you wanted to run a farm, or if you wanted to run a business, maybe you're a blacksmith or something, it doesn't really matter. You had to go and effectively rent land from these people. And the sad side of the story is that you kind of became indentured to them, where your entire life and your business was tied into this land that you were never going to own, and you couldn't escape it and move your business or your farm somewhere else if you wanted to. So it sounded great at first. You would go and you would rent this land, but suddenly you became tied to this small group of people, and you were paying large amounts of your profits and things to them. I mean, there's obviously a potential similarity in the cloud world at the moment, where every business pretty much needs a space in the cloud to run their applications. And certainly the hyperscale clouds are potentially, look, I'm not saying they're evil in any way at all, okay, but they are kind of similar to the old aristocracy and the lords of the old world, where yes, we go and we say, okay, it's Cloud X that we want to go with, and we start building our business and our infrastructure on it. And suddenly we realize, maybe it's not the best cloud for us, it's more expensive, it doesn't do what we want, it doesn't give the reporting or whatever, and we want to move to a different cloud because it looks better. But actually we're super locked in the same way that people used to be in the past, and it's not hard, it's not easy to escape that kind of lock-in. So Kubernetes has this, the small print applies, okay, but it has this huge potential to come and say, it doesn't matter what cloud you run on, if you install Kubernetes on it and you write your applications to run on Kubernetes, you can install Kubernetes on another cloud and more easily migrate your application across to it. A more technical example would be, we haven't for years written applications to run on whatever, Dell servers or HPE servers or Supermicro servers. We run our applications to run on Windows or Linux, or we did for a long time, right? And as long as we could install Windows or Linux on whatever manufacturer or brand or vendor of server, it didn't matter if we were on Dell today and Supermicro was cheaper the next day or the next year. We just install Windows or Linux, move the application across, because it abstracts the hardware below it. So Kubernetes has this potential going forward to abstract the cloud infrastructure below it and make it easier to do multi-cloud, to migrate between clouds, things like that. It's also going to become a supermassive black hole. And what I mean by this is the ecosystem around Kubernetes is becoming huge. It's got all these things circling around it, bringing all these amazing new features and things. An example I give quite a lot, right, is that if you deploy containers today, most of the container registries out there will, when you upload a container or a container image, it will do a deep analysis of that image, and it will provide you a really good report that says, okay, we've compared all of the code and the applications and the libraries in your image against databases of known vulnerabilities, and this is what you're vulnerable to at the moment, and it gives you this scary list. Now, we never had that before we had containers and Kubernetes. But it's just one example of the kind of new features and things that are being built by the ecosystem that are all circling around Kubernetes. They're coming to Kubernetes and containers first, and potentially coming to containers and Kubernetes only. So this kind of ecosystem of all of the tools and things that you as a business and you as a team within your business want to be more productive and to provide better services to your customers, they're all coming to the world of Kubernetes. And actually, that's it. I'm done. So basically, thank you. I am a fanboy, but Kubernetes is the future. Whether you like it or you hate it, it is the future for most people.
Appreciate it, Nigel. Thank you very much. Cheers. Wow, a lot to take away. I feel like we've been coming back around to themes of multi-cloud, to themes of where software is going. I'm really excited to bring on our next speaker. We got to meet a few weeks ago, and I was really excited. For those of you who don't know Quant, you'll get to learn a little bit more about it, and more specifically, a lot of what they're doing in the machine learning and R&D space. So please welcome up on stage Laurent, the CTO of Quant.
Hello.
How you doing, Laurent?
Good.
Good. So, we were talking just before, and I was saying, what really interests me about, building deep tech companies is just how difficult it is to bridge the gap between technology and the business need. So why don't you just joined Quant recently? Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about where you come from and why you've come into Quant at this juncture?
Yeah. So recently I've been a lot into machine learning domain. Was leading a research team in machine learning for Rakuten Group, which was into e-commerce. And these experience and the previous ones and the current one are for a big part related to how to establish an excellent collaboration between tech and business. And this is what has been done for years and decades. Using product teams and all the processes and methods around that. But with AI and machine learning comes some specific things that we have to deal with.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, we spent time today, we heard from engineering leaders about, we heard from application engineers and we heard from platform engineers. So tell me a little bit about what do you think makes AI innovation and development different from when it comes to connecting it back to the business challenges that it's meant to solve?
Yeah. So usually when some idea, a project comes from business, so it goes through a series of different steps. Like at some point you have user stories, and then you evaluate them, you implement them, and so on. There is a whole process everybody knows, with a lot of different domains involved. But very often, with machine learning, it's like, okay, you have data scientists, they know their job, and we understand nothing about what they do, so let them do their work and we'll see. And that's totally the wrong way to do it, because in the end, every technology you work on is for some business or for some user experience, some values of the company. Like at Quant, our value is that data privacy, for instance, which is at the core. And so everything you do on the technological side should be related to that, to the user experience, the business, the values, the revenues, and everything. And so there should be a very good collaboration between people doing machine learning and everybody else. And so that's a very big issue that we just have some understanding of, I think. So there is some work done on what's called ML Ops, like going from working on the model until production, and that's great. That's a great evolution. A lot of things are happening there. But regarding discussing between business and machine learning people, or even regular development teams and data scientists, it's not so easy, and people don't well understand each other, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Last night with one of our speakers, we were talking about engineering ops and the sort of rise of this position. Cesar, who was speaking earlier today, kind of sits in that space. In revenue teams, we have marketing and sales ops. I've started to see machine learning ops. There's startups like Hugging Face and these tools kind of working on the sort of life cycle between inference and deployment and kind of facilitating that. But you don't really see a lot of it right now, and you especially don't see a lot of data science ops, and that's a team that can really be relegated to a kind of academic corner.
Yeah, exactly. The process to go down to production there is some improvement and some new methods, but upstream there is still a whole field where there is a lot of work to be done. And particularly for like if people work on a model, machine learning model, so how to evaluate it, and you have a lot of metrics, but they're very technical, and the business people or the product team, they really should well understand what it's about, and it's not like up to them to understand, it's also up to the data scientists to explain, and to everybody to come up with a common form of the KPIs or objectives that everybody agrees on and everybody understands well.
Yeah, explainability seems to be a big recurring theme today, especially when it comes to AI. We had Killian from Golem.ai talking about this a little bit. And we talked a lot about the customer-facing side of explainability. Yep. If you're going to have customers using AI, but they don't understand it, it can very quickly feel like machine says go, or machine says yes.
Yeah, even inside Google, you heard about the news of someone.
Exactly. You can really quickly lose the explainability, and then you lose the relationship.
Yeah. It should really be something. It's quite simple actually, and it's quite easy to understand what a machine learning model is from a very high level perspective. So it's trained on a data set, and you come up with some output. And but the difficult part is about the metric, how to evaluate well the model, and what data set it's based on, and that makes all the difference. As we know, for like a big language model trained on the whole internet, you can have very high biases and very important problem with the models that you cannot anticipate. Well, you can guess because looking at the internet, you can guess what will come into it and get out of it. But that is where the complexity lies, like the data set and the metrics to evaluate.
Well, without wanting to make you project too far into the future, where would you like to see Quant's relationship with this relationship between data science or AI, machine learning, and business? Where do you want to take that team over the next year and that relationship? How do you want to see that evolve?
So one important part of the service we provide, Quant provides, has to do with answering the user request, but to do that, well understand what the intent behind the request. So to do that, we need a lot of machine learning, natural language processing. And then at the later stages, we need to retrieve the results and rank the results. And there is also a lot of machine learning. So machine learning is really a big part of the service we provide. There is not only machine learning, there are a lot of other stuff, but it's really crucial. And we need there the connection between what's done in the models and what the user search experience should be, how much we comply with our core values, which are data privacy. And so it's also about understandability and well evaluating what the models do and agree on the business goals and the user experience we want to achieve.
And what do you think will probably be your what's the next big challenge to getting there over the next few months for you, or even the rest of the year? What do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle?
One big challenge for a company of our size, which is kind of small compared to others, so is to have a very close loop of interaction between the R&D, the innovation part, the development teams, like web development teams, even the platform, like we heard before, it's a hugely important part for us, of course, and the product and business team. So we need a close loop so that everybody well understand each other. The goals are clear and common, and we can iterate very fast So this is the challenge for us now.
And what do you hear product and business teams asking for from, R&D teams? What are they coming to you and asking for, or are they not coming to you?
This can be a problem. Like for one part, they can rely on people working on information retrieval and machine learning without well understanding it and just expecting that it improves. So it has been the case for some time. Now we're really trying to do something differently. So we're trying to make everybody understand each other and that the goal is common, well formalized and makes sense for business, user experience, people in charge of revenues and data scientists.
Well, I can imagine that it's an exciting challenge. I know, we had the VP of Engineering of Teads on earlier, and he said, it's tough for Teads because we're competing with Google, and I said, yes, I know what it's like.
Yeah, but I think the answer is this close loop of interaction and good collaboration between the different domains in the company.
Well, it sounds like a really exciting time to be at Quant. Yeah. I got to talk with the CEO just before, and it's new,
it is.
Fresh team, fresh
and we're
ideas.
just releasing a lot of things like tools for protecting data privacy and so on. So it's a good time.
And I heard new swag as well. I saw some new pins floating around. I might have to get myself some. Awesome. Well, Laurent, it was really great to have you join with us. Thanks for giving a bit of insight into R&D's relationship with the rest of the team. I really appreciate it. Let's give a huge round of applause to Laurent.
Thank you.
Okay, gang. We've got one last theme today. I'm really excited about this next talk. It's probably one of those talks where you sit down with a group of people and everyone is infinitely smarter than you, and it's very, very intimidating. So I'm going to do my best not to get drowned out by some of the amazing brilliance of our next speakers. So first, going into this theme, I've known him for too long. It probably betrays both of our ages to let him know. Probably one of the most influential CTOs that I've known in the French tech ecosystem, although he would hate for me to say that about him. So please welcome up on stage the co-founder and CTO of Eventbrite and business angel, Renaud Visage. How was my intro?
It was great.
Yeah, too much?
It's been a long time for sure.
I know, it's been a while. I know, I was thinking back on it. So, I told you, when we talked the other day, I said, I don't want to talk too much about Eventbrite because, it's a great story. I love Eventbrite. That was kind of how we got to know each other when I was organizing events and okay. But I really want to talk about, as you've switched into this angel investor role, what do you try to bring from being a CTO to the table as an angel? And what are you seeing in the technical teams that you're investing in when you're evaluating them? What are you looking for, and what are you bringing from your experience at Eventbrite to that interaction?
Well, I started investing because I think I like strategy and business more than the technical part of being a CTO. So I know there's different kinds of CTOs, but I was always more the product business CTO than the deeply technical CTO. So I never did DevOps, for example. Like, I don't care, just make the thing run, and we hired people for that. So first and foremost, I think I bring this experience of building a business through technology, because we are a tech product. I know what it takes to please customers, so this is very valuable lessons that we learned the hard way. Growing Eventbrite from just the three of us to 1,000 plus people. Now we're about 800 employees. On the technical side, I think a lot of early stage founders have no experience, and that's fine. I think I had very little experience building teams. I learned on the way. But if I can accelerate their journey, and that's what I do a lot, it's CTO mentoring. CEOs get a lot of help from their venture investors, from other CEOs that they network with. But I think the technical function is always a little isolated, and it's kind of, you're on your own, do your thing, we trust you. But there's very little support, like the VCs don't help you. There's a few events now, Tech Rocks, VivaTech, a lot of others. We're organizing one with Point9, for example, in a few weeks. If you want to come, let me know. And this is very valuable. And I spend a lot of time like doing one-on-ones with a few CTOs that I like and who like me, and they come prepared. They have a long list of things they want to talk about. I help them with actually not so much the technical details. Nobody.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I got to imagine the laundry list is probably it's a lot less technical, so it's a lot more.
Yeah.
What organizational?
Organizational. What should be their role? Like a lot of them don't want to be managers, but they don't want to not be managers either. So where do I position myself? And depending on the growth trajectory of the company, you ask this question more and more. How do I work with product? At the beginning, you don't have product, but at some point, you need to add product managers. So who's managing who? Are there separate functions? All depends on the company and the skills of the CTO. And when do I hire? What type of engineers should I hire? How do I make teams that function the best together? What do I do with these early employees that are no longer fitting in the overall structure of the teams? So all very important questions, and you have to get them right. But without experience on someone to ask the question to, it's like a guessing game.
And I got to imagine that you're seeing a lot of companies, right? I mean, you're seeing a lot of European startups, probably a lot of non-European startups as well. What's getting you excited right now? Like, what do you see in the ecosystem? What do you see going on? What piques your attention?
I have about 60 portfolio companies. One of them is in the room, actually, over there. I saw. He's going to be your next speaker, so be ready. It's a great company. I've done a lot of SaaS, a lot of dev tools. I usually want to understand what I'm investing in. So I've done very little crypto, very little Web3. Not that I don't think it's important. I just don't necessarily understand everything. I've started becoming more and more interested in climate tech. So I think there's a lot of motivation from a younger generation to get involved, and a lot of different new business models combining like science, engineering, and business to bring new ways of doing things. So a lot of carbon capture, for example, is really borrowing technologies used in energy or industry, combining them with software to solve the problem. And I think that motivation is really motivating for me as I think of my next career, of what I want to get involved in. I mean, I was involved in the early days of the internet revolution. I was in San Francisco at the time. I saw it take off. I saw all these great companies being formed, growing super fast, IPOing in 2 years. It was a little excessive. It's been a bit quieter since then, but also very exciting. But now the industry is mature. There's a lot of investors. There's a lot of all the different categories of talent that you need to build software businesses. On the climate tech side, it's still very early. Like, we have a lot of very motivated folks, but the technology is still not mature. The teams haven't proven much yet. They are not huge companies in the space, and that's what gets me excited personally. And I think, coming from an engineering background, I was a civil engineer when I started my career. It's like coming full circle into the real world.
Yeah, I mean, I like this idea of like software-defined solutions to, let's say, non-traditional software problems, like as civil engineering problems, industrial problems like climate change. I wonder, when we were talking about it the other day, I said, the thing that really frustrates me when I see a lot of like tech for good or climate tech is I feel like there's still a huge gap between like what people want to, the change people want to bring, and the ability to build a software level scalable business. And I wonder, do you see that gap closing? Do you see people finding little pockets of ability, or is it still very much philanthropy? How do you close the gap on, and should it be closed, or should we just accept that climate tech is not a venture capitalistic?
We shouldn't accept that.
No.
I mean, if you think about it, every industry needs to be transformed in the next few years. And the sooner the better for ourselves, for the planet, but also for the businesses. Like, they're going to be hit with very huge fines at some point because we just can't keep doing what we're doing. and they're all looking for solutions. So I think the venture-backed capabilities of these businesses will definitely be there. It's just harder. Like you get into industries that are not used to changing fast. I was talking the other day to an AI company that takes all the data coming from real-life cement factory infrastructure, and that allows them to optimize the carbon emissions of the cement factory by reduce it by 20 or 30% just with software, just looking at the data. So the economies are real if you apply it to the right problem. And software, I think, has a great role to play. Like, it's incredible how much the data is underused in all of these facilities. They just don't think like startups, so they don't attack the problem the right way or put the right talent on the problem to find a solution. So that's why I think startups have a lot of opportunities to bridge the gap in talent and experience to do that properly.
Do you still get excited by dev tools companies and other things like that as well, or do you feel like you're pulled very, very hard by this this focus?
I think climate tech is very consuming because there's so many different industries, so many types of applications. Just understanding the life cycle of carbon or CO2 and methane and all the other greenhouse gases is quite tricky. But I'm still interested in making software more easily written, deployed, so that we can go faster. And I don't think we should rewrite another login form from scratch. Like, this is useless. We all know what it should do. We all know that it's hard, but it's still the case today. Like, you don't have things that are easy to build, and it's getting better and better. Like when we started Eventbrite in 2006, there were no frameworks, and Python was in, I think, point 1 at the time, or some very early stage release. And we just had to build everything from scratch, and we wasted a lot of time as a result. So you have it easy, I think, with all the frameworks that exist. It's a bit more complex with all the evolution of the web. The frameworks make it easier, but you still need to be more specialized, I think, than before. So I'm interested in anything that makes the world more efficient, and the world of software especially.
Yeah, so I guess if we summarize it, like, you know, software needs to improve, and then the impact software can have on society can follow, and one limits the other.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I don't like the words impact or tech for good, because I think they're connotated with philanthropy, and that's not what the venture capital firms that are specializing in climate are after. Like, we're after breakthrough changes in specific industries powered by either deep tech or software.
You're a climate capitalist.
Very much so. Maybe that's a good name, actually.
There you go. You can get the domain right as you walk off stage. I'll give it to you.
TM.
Yeah,
Liam Boger.
There you go. It's on camera now. Now you'll know. Okay, well, Renaud, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing a little bit about what you're seeing. And let's give a huge round of applause to Renaud.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, buddy. Okay. Moving right along, I'm really excited to bring on this next panel. Let's jump right into it so we can get as much time talking with them as possible. Please welcome Magali, David, and Celine on stage. Give them a warm round of welcome. Oh yeah, that's you. The front of stage. Hey everybody, how y'all doing?
Good, and you?
Good.
Great.
Good. Having a good day. Not too hot.
No, actually, it's quite cold here.
It's cool here. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a jacket. Maybe I don't know.
On stage, it's great.
On stage, it's good. I'd say. Okay. Well, I feel like, so, we wanted to talk about how far AI has come and how far it has to go. I feel like a really good place to open it up is to just talk a little bit about introducing yourselves and the companies you work for, and just kind of opening up your relationship to the topic today. So, Celine, you're the closest to me, so why don't you take it away?
Okay. So my name is Céline Bayer, and I'm the CTO of Vision. Vision is we develop cutting-edge AI products. So basically, we do deep learning videos, and our product try to prevent shoplifting. Yeah, so basically that's it.
So I am Magali. I'm the CTO of Akemia, and Akemia is a digital platform that combines both quantum-based physics and artificial intelligence to create new drugs. I mean, to create new molecules that will become drugs to cure diseases.
And hello, I'm David. I'm co-founder and CTO at Shift Technology. And at Shift, we help insurance companies take better decisions. We started in 2013 with helping them detect and fight against insurance fraud. And we opened it up to anti-money laundering, claims decisions automation, underwriting, risk detection, etc.
Okay. Okay. So, you know, one of the things I found really interesting when we spoke last time was clearly three very different companies. And yet at the same time, as we started to talk about the challenges you guys were facing, we all kind of centered around some of the same challenges. And the first one that really came up that I thought was interesting was the challenge around scaling AI. And I feel like, especially for someone on the outside, it seemed like a solved problem. Like AI is here, it's working, Uber knows that the driver to send to me who's the closest. Like, I really felt like this had been solved. But you know, the way you guys describe the challenges that you're facing as CTOs, it really feels like there's still challenges in just getting scaling in terms of deployment, and even scaling up the ability to process data and actually run the algorithm. So Magali, maybe start a little bit about some of the challenges you face as you're scaling up Akemia, and how you're processing data, and how that's been a little difficult today.
So actually at Akemia, what we do as we combine physics and artificial intelligence, we have a double challenge. First, the fact that physics calculations that require a lot of time and computing. And so we need to be able to build an infrastructure that is scalable, robust, in the cloud, in a HPC mode. So this is like quite difficult to find the resources and the right amount of scaling while maintaining the cost at a reasonable amount, and the right skills to maintain and to this infrastructure. And at the same time, we have also coupling these methods with AI. And so as such, we are serving models on billions of molecules. So we need to be able to do that also in a reasonable amount of time to be able to find drugs. And this is a key challenge that we have today. And this is something I already mentioned, the fact that as we need the right skills to do it, and to master the cloud that is always evolving, to be sure we do it the right way.
Yeah, it seems, the physical challenge seems very cumbersome. I think we forget very often that the data set doesn't always exist. Not all of the data is already there, and sometimes you guys are actually running the calculations and from the physical data set to actually get there.
Yes, right. So the advantage of Akemia is that we don't need necessarily data to train, because we are creating the data ourselves. But it also means that we need to have to manage, monitor, and follow this data that is growing at exponential rate, and we have to be sure to be able to scale this data infrastructure up.
And Celine, it seems like the challenge that you were sharing the other day is more closer to I'd say more the DevOps and the production side, and actually managing the deployment of this, right?
Yes, I manage the backend team, so we work closely with the deploying team. We also share some part of the code. But the thing is, at Vision, we have a hybrid product. So we deploy physical servers in the stores. So first, we try the cloud, the full cloud solution, and the limitation were the bandwidth in the store. And also, it was quite costly to do everything in the cloud. So for now, we have an hybrid solution. And I think we share the same limitation with David. The training time is so long, so we have to make a trade-off between having a training time short but quite costly, or have a training time that takes longer, like a few weeks, actually.
And David, speak a little bit about the challenges, because you guys are at a pretty sizable size right now. You're processing a lot of data. So how how do those challenges manifest themselves now that you guys are really working with some sizable clients?
Yeah, well, I actually resonate a lot with some of the challenges that Magali and Céline shared. And I think as CTO, we have the goal and the mindset always of industrializing robust performance software solution that works in in all cases in a perfect manner, is fast to respond. And data science and AI is a challenging topic for this, especially as you try to push your models to be more complex, to process a lot more data, to access whatever deep relationships are nested within the large data sets that you process. And you end up facing challenges, and I recognize those that were quoted with performances of the training or the processing, with having models that are complex, that are specific for the problems that you want to treat, but that are still clean enough that they can be put in the same environment and deployed, and that that you can trust them and rely on them. And it's all this interface between the traditional CTO role and the role of, in some companies you have the chief of data or chief data scientist. In some companies, data scientists report to the CTO, but it's still the same thing. It's making those two parts of the tech organization as a whole work well together.
Yeah, and it was funny because one of the things that we talked about was about the relationship that we have of each of you to AI. So Magali, you come from a bit more of a hard tech background, right? A bit more of an R&D heavy background.
Yes, I have a math background, more in R&D, yes.
Yeah, and David and Céline come more from maybe a more traditional software engineering leadership background, correct?
Yeah, that's true. I started as a web developer, actually.
Right.
And now a manager.
Yeah, and so I wonder how does being an AI CTO either coming, a CTO at an AI driven company, how does that relationship differ between, based on your relationship to the topic?
Yeah, I don't know for the others, but AI has been around for many years now. So even when I studied engineering, in my last experience, I've been working 2 years in MangoPay, and I work closely with the data team. And yes, it was very interesting and discovered a new way of doing. So yes, when I joined Vision, I was very excited to learn more about it.
And David, do you feel like the relationship with the AI team, like do you manage to bring them into the full engineering team? We talked earlier with Laurent from Quant about R&D functions and data science functions that can kind of be relegated to an almost academic function sometimes, especially when the core product isn't AI. Here, the core product is very AI driven, and so I'm wondering, how do you feel like you have that level of integration?
Yeah, well, definitely, it's my day-to-day is making this work well with my chief data scientist. I think the risk that you run in AI-oriented business can be the opposite as well, that your software engineering gets relegated a little bit because you're focusing a lot on having the best models, but then you don't find a way to present their results well to your customer. And so you always have to find that balance. And maybe when you start a business that it's where AI is at the forefront, the cursor starts a little bit on the other side. In any case, you have to get it to balance.
And Magali, for you, it feels like AI is very much, obviously it's where you come from, but it's really anchored in what in the challenges that you guys are facing as you scale.
Yes, but I've learned very early that a model, even if it's the best, if it's not deployed, it has no value anyway. So engineering is key, and that's why in the tech teams we are the data team, the machine learning team, and the software engineering team are very intertwined.
Yeah.
Because they co-develop things from the beginning, So we are sure that we avoid this kind of like misunderstanding and the model is not deployed or has like hiccups and that we cannot use it.
And okay, and so if we think about some of the other challenges that AI companies are facing today, you know, we can talk about the scaling challenges and how we make AI work, and the computational challenges or the deployment challenges. What about more of the customer-facing challenges? You know, you talked a little bit about personalization of models. It's something I hear a lot from AI companies, is trying to figure how much are we trying to build a one-size-fits-all situation for customers? How much are we trying to build something that's perfectly tailored? How do you, and on the other side, how do you make sure that what you're building is understandable to your end customer, right? If you build a model that you can't explain, and so how do you think about these challenges of making sure that at the end of the day you're finding that middle ground between building the perfect model and actually getting the customer what they're looking for, getting the customer value?
So I'd say at Shift we face these challenges certainly. Interpretability of the models is super critical in the field of fraud detection. You don't say this is fraud, deal with it. You say, hey, here's what you should be looking at to follow up on the investigation. So by nature, any model that we run has to output this. And we built this in the Shift product from the beginning. But this is how we beat some of the competition, for example. The specificity for Shift, by nature, we have to get into it. We have few customers. They're all very large. They all have a lot of pull, a lot of power when they ask for something. They also have very different data. They have a common template, but lots of differences. So we have to, if we want to give each customer the best possible result, we have to adapt. And this is where the CTO and the software of engineering function helps, because you put the boundaries, you put the channel, the swim lanes in which then your AI scientist, your data scientist can run without breaking everything by doing it too specific.
And do you yeah, go ahead. No, please.
In our case, it's more like because we're working with chemists, and it's like when we are a deep learning model that proposes a molecule that would be the right one, that's key for us to give them explanations why this is the right one and what are the properties that will differentiate them from the other ones. And this is key to embark the chemistry teams on board.
Yeah, I imagine there's got to be a lot of, you know, we talked earlier about trustworthiness, and there's got to be a lot of trust required for people to engage in, you know, leveraging the output of an AI model, right? If they don't understand where it comes from, or if they don't feel like the interpretability is there, I can imagine it can be a challenge. Do you feel like you run into, you know, one of the things that when we think about AI is we talk about this, and ethics is a big word on the AI topic, but you know, we really run into these boundaries around like what can AI do, what should. I was explaining to my driver, my Uber driver on the way here, that I was going, you know, to a technology conference, and I mean, immediately Terminator. I mean, the conversation was immediately technology is making us stupid, and Terminator is going to kill us. And I was like, no, but you don't understand. Like, it hasn't happened yet, so like, there's no reason why it should. Do you feel like you run into these challenges in an AI company?
Well, you know, AI is a tool like any other tool. So, like the one who invented the knife. Probably it was not to kill somebody else, but so either you can kill some people or either you can cook. So it's a tool, and AI is a tool to make decision easier to take.
Yeah, do you feel like you ever run up against things that you could do that maybe you don't want to do, or maybe your customers don't want to do, or maybe they want to do but you don't want to do? David?
Definitely, it's a big question that gets asked. We ask it ourselves, but our customers ask it also. You know, all of us have a social conscience. Some of our customers more than others, depends if they're you know, private companies or mutual. It's not the same. And so we've been asking ourselves this question, and we have developed our vision of the ethics of AI first. And I'd say, like Céline, we share the idea that, at least at Shift, we're not trying to build Terminator or HAL or some entity or some process that will take the best possible decisions for mankind without, any sort of control. But instead, we're building something that will be a tool in the hand of humans who know what the right decision to take is when they get the right pieces of data to help them make up their mind. But they don't get the decision taken away from them.
Yeah, I guess to come back to the knife metaphor, we're not letting the knife decide what it cuts.
I can give an example. At Vision, we insist that we detect a gesture. We install our product in retail stores. We prevent the shoplifting, but it's more a way to have decision. And we just detect gestures, and the final decision is for the staff of the store.
And Magali, if you can tell me, what are you excited about the most in the coming 12 months in terms of what you guys are working on, what you see as sort of the uncracked potential of AI? What gets you really, what gets you out of bed in the morning right now?
I think in our case is that we managed to deliver drugs quicker than what pharma industries can traditionally do. And so that's really the goal for the 12 months ahead, to be able to build a pipeline that can deliver, that is building and creating these drugs that will change the life of patients.
David, what gets you excited right now? What are you looking forward to over the next 12 months?
So it's not all in the big things, though I do have big things in mind, but every incremental step in helping insurers be there for their customers is really exciting for me. If I have to think about what does it mean, taking a leap ahead, for me it's you have a car crash, a water leakage, from your phone, from the next minute, as you enter the details of the constat amiable or whatever happened to your kitchen faucet, you get not only refunded of the right amount, you get booked with an appointment for the plumber or for the car workshop, and you get then followed up by the solution at any point in the process over the next weeks and months as you get it solved. So that's how I think, when I'll be really excited by what we've done with this industry.
Okay, so Magali is moving faster. David wants to remove friction. Céline, what gets you excited in the next 12 months? What's getting you out of bed right now?
I love the product we make because it has so many applications. Like we can detect people in warehouses, and they are just some employees, and you can detect if someone has a heart attack or something, an accident. We can have video moderation on a social network with the same product. So I'm excited about all applications we can have with AI.
Unlocking potential. I like it. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us. It was a really wonderful conversation. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, gang. I spent a little bit of time last night with this guy, and he was melting my brain for most of dinner. Please give a warm welcome to Izo, the co-founder and CEO of Athenian. And then any mic you want.
Slides. It's good. Hi, everyone. Let me first of all talk a little bit about who you're speaking with here. My name's Iso. I'm essentially a massive computer geek who's been programming most of his life, but for over the last decade building companies, and originally they're engineering organizations. And In the last 4 or 5 years, I've managed to speak with probably close to about 400 or 500 engineering orgs, and I dare to say, without exaggeration, probably close to about 1,000 engineering leaders. And throughout that journey, I started building out kind of mental models of what I saw the best engineering leaders do. And kind of the talk today is really about that, the lessons learned and mental models that all of us as engineering leaders can apply in our own careers. So let's kind of jump into it. So first and foremost, as engineering leaders, and when I talk about engineering leader, I'm talking as much about the team lead as I am talking about the CTO, we have this dual responsibility. On one hand, we have the obvious responsibility, which is like deliver value to our end users. But it's easy to forget, and especially sometimes for the CEO, to realize that we have a second responsibility, which is really building the product that is the engineering organization and truly the culture in which we're continuously improving. And I found it that if you start thinking about your own role, but also the people reporting to you in your organization as this dual responsibility, you start actually seeing that are we investing enough in the organization as a product versus actually becoming at times what we might feel like as a ticket machine to try to get value to our end users. So what do we really mean when we're talking about a culture in which we're continuously improving? What we're talking about is a culture in which, as an engineering org, we're critical of ourselves and we're constantly asking the right questions. We're constantly looking at ourselves and saying, what are our biggest bottlenecks, what we can do better? I know a lot of people who are here at this conference today have undergone quite a bit of growth or undergone quite a bit of skill. And what we see as we're growing our engineering orgs is that we all hope for this utopia where we add on more people to our team and we'll have linearly more output and outcome. But in reality, what we find is that we end up in this stepwise function of we improve, we scale up, things get worse, and we have to make another jump. And so if we find the way in which our cultures and companies, we can continuously be iterating, that's when you start building really a muscle that allows you to grow. And in my opinion, the best engineering organizations that I've seen that are run by the truly professional engineering leaders are building that muscle in themselves and in all of their leaders constantly. So today we're going to be going through kind of 8 mental models. And if you're an engineering leader today, no matter if you're a team lead or a CTO or VP of engineering, I want you to try to think about these in context of yourself. This is really to use as a tool to think about how am I and where do I fall on the spectrum? And I'll try to give as much context about these mental models based on stage. Because it is radically different for us as engineering leaders to be the CTO of a startup of 5 people versus being at a company where we're scaling from 400 to 1,000 engineers in the next 18 months. So the way to use these mental models is, besides thinking about where you are yourself and how you fall on the spectrum, is really to know that these mental models are not just about do I have the skill set that the organization needs, but also do I need to add people around me that are going to be able to help me actually get to what the organization and company needs. So this is kind of the cliche and classical one that many of us kind of know and get to all the time. Myself as an engineering leader, am I very people-oriented or am I very deeply technical? And where do I sit on that spectrum? In many organizations, this ends up being the split between the CTO and the VP of engineering and going through where that reporting line is. Do you both report up to the CEO? Does the VP of Eng report up to the CTO instead? And a lot of this is about having the realization of that in your organization, you truly need both. And when you're a tiny early stage startup, you can get away without having the people-oriented engineering leader when you're all 5 people in a room and you're trying to find product market fit. But as you start scaling and growing, that becomes absolutely impossible. And truth be told, the engineering leader that is both, and with both I mean gets passionate about building the organization and growing its people inside of it, as passionate they get about the architecture and the libraries that we use and the language choices that we make, really is a rarity, and it becomes almost a unicorn of engineering leaders. And so in most organizations we end up splitting these roles. And so once you know for yourself where you fall on that spectrum, it ends up really helping you as well about where you want to be. Because what often happens, and particularly in hyper-growth environments, is that we're asked to take on roles that are not necessarily the roles that fit the best with our own mindset and where we want to be going. So this is personally one of my favorites, and it starts mattering a lot as the organizations we work in grow. And it's the competence versus confidence spectrum. So the great way to illustrate this is when you talk about you sit in a room and you have the VP of sales in that room, and the CEO asks and says, hey, how are we doing this quarter? And the VP of sales comes in massively well prepared with the numbers and with absolute confidence says, we're going to hit quota in 6 weeks from now. And at this point, the CEO comes and probably for the first time and says to the engineering, they're like, how are we on delivering the product that we're expecting to deliver? What are the major challenges that we're solving? And what ends up happening is that very often as engineering leaders, our response goes towards competence, about showing how we're tackling the problems. We're doing really well, but we have performance issues, but we're going to shard the database, and the way we're going to do that, X, Y, Z, and we go on and go on. But what we are not doing in that moment, and we're showing all of the paths that it can take. This can go good, this can go bad, this might take a lot of extra work. And at the end of the day, the executive team around you and your CEO in that room has not left with the feeling of, I've got this. The CTO has it, I don't need to worry. Or VP of engineering, or any leader in any team. And as an engineering leader, you really want to think about showing your competence versus actually showing your confidence. And all of us, and I think this comes from the geeky nature that we have, often fall more towards the competence spectrum. But when you look at really the best engineering leaders, they know when to show competence to build trust in the environment that they're in, but also very much know when to actually exude confidence. It's like, this is a difficult challenge, but we've got this, don't worry, this will be okay, or this is not okay and we're going to need support to actually tackle this. If you want to understand how we're doing it, we can set up a separate meeting. And as you can imagine, the larger the organization, the more you have to start finding that balance, and the more you have to be the peer that is confident that others can rely on. So I do this, Jason's a longtime friend of mine. He was the CTO and shadow CEO of GitHub for many years. And we have this podcast together on engineering leadership called Developing Leadership. And it's by now the largest podcast in the engineering leadership space. And he said this quote a couple of months ago that really, really stuck with me. And it's a useful mental model, kind of hack to use as you get into your next meeting with other stakeholders. And it goes along the lines of lead with confidence, show a little bit of competence, and end with confidence again. And this kind of confidence-competence sandwich is a pretty good one to use, particularly when you're meeting with any non-engineering stakeholder. So I like to challenge all of us, and particularly the most technical amongst ourselves, and I definitely at times can be so as well. I still geek out about writing functional Haskell code. Is, are we really as engineering leaders thinking about people, product, and process? And how much of our time for the stage that we're at as a company is dedicated on each of these three areas? As you kind of see, when we're in the very early days of the startup, it entirely is product-oriented, because if we don't find product-market fit, we're all out of a job, right? But as we start growing and as the organization demands more of us, we're going to have to become far more oriented on people and process, and particularly as we make these changes. And I know these are the kind of things that everybody here probably is, okay, this is obvious, but if we look at how we're dividing our time as engineering leaders, are we actually spending the time to think through all of these three areas? Are we investing in these areas? And are we doing so in the right dimensions? The truth is, often because of the pressure of the business and the pressure of all the fires that we have around ourselves, we're not actually doing so. And that's kind of the point of these mental models, is to be able to take a moment and reflect back and say, hey, am I investing enough in these types of areas? So at the same time is quite a few of us can be quite opinionated. And I think it's incredibly important that as engineering leaders and as leaders in general, at times we are very opinionated. But there's a strong spectrum between, am I adaptable, am I opinionated, or am I dogmatic? And as at a very, very early stage of a company, you can be opinionated, you can pretty much, and you have to be opinionated. If there's no one in the room that says we're going to move forward with this decision, or we're choosing this library, or we're all going to be stuck using Jira, things don't move forward. Probably many of us, and particularly earlier in our career, sat in those rooms where it was with all the 6, 7 engineers at the early stage startup or in the team, trying to all convince each other of the choices that we just wish somebody would make. But as we grow and as we scale, what ends up becoming more important, it's no longer just being opinionated, but it's being able to be opinionated in combination with being adaptable. Because as the organization gets bigger, it becomes more and more about building alignment in the organization and not necessarily always about being right or having a strong opinion. And as you see kind of from the little icons here as the skills, truly dogmatic never ever has room in any great engineering organization. If we truly believe that there's no room for context and no room for adapting your mindset, and you're truly constantly dogmatic, truth is you're going to be out of a job or you're going to be put sideways in the org and become the research CTO who gets to do one thing, that nobody's looking at. And that's really the honest truth of what we see time and time again. And that really has to do with the fact that as you grow and as the company grows, you have to become more adaptable. And it can be tough. Now, this again feels like one of those, really classic things that to all of us is obvious. But if we really look at how much time are we thinking about the short term versus the medium term versus the long term, the truth of the matter is that in most engineering organizations, from any size to billion-dollar companies to the tiniest startups, we are really truly thinking short term. We're thinking 1 quarter, maybe 2 quarters ahead, if at all. And that has to do with the fact that we are overwhelmed as engineering leaders time and time again with the requirements because we are where the rubber meets the road. Right? None of this here could exist if it wasn't for the amazing engineering leaders that were here. Because at the end of the day, it has to get built, and we're the ones who go build it. As you can see, I'm a pretty big fan of the engineering org myself. But at the end of the day, there are trade-offs that we need to make, because the decisions that we make in the early days are the ones that haunt us later down the line. And then the ones that I see already some smiles because they haunt us later down the line, 10 years later or 5 years later. It's like, was that decision that was made that has now cost us 50 engineers to have to refactor all the code base. But we need to find those balances. And this is one of the cores of this talk is that every time I've seen the best and professional engineering leaders at the organizations that are able to move the fastest, onboard people successfully, and maintain high quality, it truly comes down to people finding themselves in the balance of the center of these things. Now, this is one that is, where are you spending your time? The truth is, at the end of the matter, in most engineering organizations, the engineering leadership is spending time with the engineering org. And this is one of the most limiting factors for you to be able to grow as a leader and the organization to actually achieve its goals. If you today are a VP of engineering or a CTO at anything that is no longer a small startup, and you do not have a weekly meeting or bi-weekly meeting with the VP of sales, VP of marketing, with people who are your peers in other functions, I would highly, highly encourage you to rethink that. Because what ends up happening if you start being the executive that's spending time with the other functions is you start getting a much better understanding of what truly matters to the business. You grow yourself, you start getting a better idea of which bottlenecks are the ones that truly hurt the business versus the ones you don't feel are. And particularly as you keep growing in an organization and you keep getting larger, this becomes more and more important. And at the same time, this holds true for customers. Because your business, your product org, wants the engineers to have face time with customers. They want the engineers to be able to understand the customer. And if you as an engineering leader are not doing so yourself, it doesn't just only set the wrong example, it also means that you are essentially setting direction of a filter through others in the org, and you are the person who executes the engineering function in the leadership team. You're not the leader that is working with the entire leadership team to achieve its goals. And I understand it because there's so much going on the engineering side of the house that booking those meetings doesn't necessarily feel relevant. But it makes such a difference, and it's really what we see progresses people to be able to run engineering orgs of 20 to 30 people to what allows people to run engineering orgs of hundreds and even thousands of people. So this is again one that I think is less obvious to a lot of engineering leaders, and to me is one of the most important ones. we come from a culture of consensus seeking. Actually, a lot of us seek consensus all of the time. And I think it just comes from the nature of, how we grew up on IRC, coded in open source for many of us, and are in environments where we massively respect our peers. Actually, it's not uncommon for engineering leaders to know that they're the person in the room who knows the least about something, because the staff engineer or the people who've been there longer truly have the knowledge. But as the people that we work with, the other engineering managers, directors that report to us, or if you're an engineering leader of just a single team, the engineers that are reporting to you, we fall in coaching mode. And with coaching mode, I mean that we are trying to nudge people into making their own understanding of the direction we want them to go. Because it's comfortable. It's the thing that you can do without feeling like you're saying something that is too much in someone's face. I'm from the Netherlands originally. We have a little bit of a culture of being known to be direct, and I guess you can see that I'm pretty direct today here as well. But one of the things that as a company starts scaling, and to be honest, to me this holds true from the early stages to being an incredibly large organization, but as you get larger it becomes unavoidable, is that as an engineering leader you need to start setting expectations. I've had countless of conversations where somebody says, but my engineering manager, should be doing X, Y, or Z. And he should care about these things. And I think it's important that we do so. And I'm like, have you told him clearly that this is what you expect from his role in this quarter or at the level that he's at? Well, I've tried to get him there. I believe if I've pushed him, I've nudged him. No, have you actually gone in the room and said, hey, Jackie, you currently have just gotten from team lead to engineering manager, and that means that I expect you for your role to achieve X, Y, and Z, to communicate A, B, and C. And it sounds really simple, but it's something a lot of us aren't doing. And it's honestly one of the best ways to start changing the conversation, because if you get over the hurdle of the confidence to do so, what you end up seeing is that the team members you have, both your peers in the management team, the people who are reporting to you, start truly feeling empowered because now they know what's expected of them to truly succeed. And this, of course, doesn't hold just true for engineering, but I think in engineering we particularly could do a better job at this from the hundreds of orgs that I've seen. Now, some of you might get the CAP theorem joke. I'm a bit of a database geek. But at the end of the day, we all know that we are constantly making trade-offs in engineering. The holy grail that doesn't exist, the fairyland, is that we can move really fast, shipping new features for product, fix all of the bugs on time, and we have perfect quality, perfect velocity, and we're always shipping value. The truth is that never works. We're always making a trade-off between moving fast and shipping a lot of features, generating customer impact, but suffering quality. We'll notice either in the form of tech debt or bugs or incidents or downtime. I mean, all of us have had this. Or we find ourselves in the mode where we are heavily emphasizing quality and reliability, but we're no longer able to actually ship features fast. And we're constantly picking these balances. And I see this kind of like an elastic band around these three, and we get to pull it really only to one side between two of them. And it's important that while we all know this, it's a mental model that we communicate to the rest of the org, to ourselves, and we clearly set expectations for the different parts of our organization. Some are obvious. The SRE side of the house is massively oriented towards quality. Often the application side is massively oriented to velocity. But once you go a little bit past that, you realize that these expectations that you're setting between these also need to align with the business. So if you're meeting with the VP of sales and you're meeting with the CEO and you're meeting with the VP of marketing, you'll start understanding what the expectations of the business truly are. Do they want us on this product to move really fast and break things, but it's all about getting to market because we need to win X revenue? Or is it entirely about quality because we're delivering an on-prem product to the French ministry and we absolutely cannot mess that up? Right? And so again, at the end of the day, some of these are obvious things, but you need to be using them in your communication with others. And yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, I haven't yet to see the unicorn that actually is able to do all three perfectly. And I can tell you, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of organizations, and at Athenian, the company I founded, we see the data of hundreds of orgs, and it's always a trade-off. So a couple of key takeaways is understand what stage you're at. Understand the maturity of your stage. We notice as well that an early stage startup shouldn't be trying to build their own Kubernetes cluster, just like an early stage startup should be massively focused on product and shouldn't be trying to go build every people process and engineering ladder out already. We really know that the best engineering leaders find balance. Myself, and I know others, we can be quite extreme, swing one side to another, either opinionated on technology or on process. But at the end of the day, we are, as engineers, responsible to build balance of a highly functioning organization. And once that goes to the extremes, never ends up as a highly functioning org. And really, really make sure that you don't do everything at once. And remember, like, all of us got into this because we love building something. No matter if that was, a piece of code that you wrote or a small game, and it got us into programming. And the true passion of when we all wrote code wasn't about org design. It wasn't about library choices. It probably wasn't even about, do we have a dynamic type system or static type system. We were just excited to build something and see it work. Now you're an engineering leader and you're hopefully no longer writing code, as in your job. You are building something else. You're building the product of your organization. And honestly, if you start thinking about it that way, get excited about it in the same way you were excited when you first started writing code, except this time you're building the org. And when you start thinking of it as this is a product I'm building, it becomes exciting again and it becomes fun, because at the end of the day, it is a complex system. It has state, it has flows. It is actually just as much like a code base. And a lot of us can see our own organization design reflected in our code base as well. So let me tell you just a little bit about what we do at Athenian. As I told you, we spend time with hundreds of engineering orgs. And because we spend time with hundreds of engineering orgs is because we truly want them to continuously improve their eng-org. So all of the conversations that I've started having with you here today, on our side, we have engineering leaders who have these with our customers. But what we realized over the years is that to truly empower engineering organizations to continuously improve, we needed to bring visibility into the engineering org. Visibility into the processes and the teams, never individuals. Truly and empowering teams by giving them metrics and insights. And so this is what we do at Athenian. We actually are happy to be in Paris. We work with some incredible companies here, from Mace to Lifen to others. And yeah, so definitely come find me after if you have a chat, if this is something that piques your interest, or go to our website, athenian.com. And at the same time, because we have this crazy visibility on all of the challenges that engineering orgs are facing, and you have anything that's coming your mind, ping me. It's ISO, EISO at athenian.co. Find me afterwards. We don't charge ever for any conversations that we have or consulting. We're a SaaS business, but we really like to help. And because we see so many things, we often can give you some insights to everything from why is everyone switching to GitHub Actions on their CI system, all the way to how should I be, dealing with my leadership team as we're growing from 100 to 500 engineers. So thank you very much, and I hope this was useful.
Appreciate it, buddy. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. This has been and will again soon be the CTO Forum. Really quickly, I wanted to thank all of these scalers floating around in purple little polos today. They've been amazing. They're the people who make the lights come on and the slides change and the microphone work. We really wanted to put a great conference on for CTOs. I'm blown away by the engineering leaders, by the co-founders of developer tools, by the open source maintainers that have come out today. The topics that we've talked about, developer experience, build versus run, and these are topics that Scaleway cares about. They're topics we talk about with our customers all the time. So thanks everybody for coming out. We look forward to seeing you soon. We are going to be having a nice little party this evening. If you are interested in joining us and hanging out on the Seine on a boat, I believe we still have, 20 or 30 more invites. So come find me if you want to come hang out with us afterwards. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of VivaTech, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.